Well, good evening, and I would like to welcome you and call to order our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, September 21st. I would like to note that we've had an addition to the agenda, and that is item 12.6.b, and that's under the Parks and Rec part of the agenda, and that is a staff report that has been added. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? So I have one to declare, and that is on item 11.4.a, and I have a family member who works for a firm that is doing engineering work for the applicant, and I have filled out the form, and it is in our clerk's office. Well, it's the day after an election, and for those of you that don't know me all that well, I am a bit of a political junkie. Election days are very exciting for me, and I have worked on many campaigns for all levels of government. Last night, I made a bowl of popcorn, poured a glass of wine, and watched with great interest the coverage of the results. I enjoy the banter and analysis, and I have to say, I am a great armchair quarterback. But today is the day after, and I always find it one of reflection. I'm sure that we can all be entertained as we dissect the election, the results, and the new government that we now have. I don't want to do that right now. I've been reflecting on a repeating theme I heard over and over from electorate and pundits alike. Our elected officials must do better. With a minority government, the opportunity to do so is right in front of our federal elected officials. Over the past 37 days, we saw the best of election campaigns and we saw the worst. My fear is that the rhetoric of this campaign will filter into the House. And if that happens, we all lose. So I challenge all the newly elected federal MPs to take a lesson from municipal governments. One of the things I am most proud of as a municipal elected official is the ability for colleagues around the horseshoe to participate in healthy and sometimes emotional debate and leave the discussion at the horseshoe to move forward for the betterment of community. That is something I think you will hear from the majority of municipal council members. That used to be the case back in the day. I can remember attending raucous all candidates meetings full of banter back and forth, and then going out with beers for volunteers from the opposing campaign. If, as a voter and citizen, you are done with behaviors that we see from many of our elected officials at higher levels, demand better. To participate in the democratic process is the envy of many across the world. As an elected official, do not diminish the responsibility that the electorate have entrusted in you. We all deserve that. I do want to take this opportunity, though, to acknowledge and thank everyone who put their name forward to represent their chosen party in hopes of representing community and country. Standing in front of a bunch of voters is not an easy thing to do. So thank you very much for that commitment. I do have another historical note to share with you today. We cannot let today actually go by with acknowledging that September 21st marks the 150th anniversary of the incorporation of the village of Lucan. It was bylaw 202 that was passed that incorporated the village. And I think that Lisa is able to pull a copy of that bylaw up. I believe it sits in the Western Archives at the right now. But Tom Hearn, who's a resident, of course, many of us all know Tom, he reminded the museum and the Lucan Area Heritage Society of this important date, and they shared it on their social media. So I could not let today go by without acknowledging this important date in our history. So little old Lucan is 150 years old today. We do not need to go into public session, but we do have a number of public meetings ahead of us in this agenda. So the first one, council will be actually moving in to sit as a committee of adjustment under the Planning Act. So if I can get a mover and a seconder for the motion to adjourn our regular meeting and sit as the committee of adjustment, I would entertain that now. Councillor Regan and a seconder, Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. All right, we do have a consent application in front of us, and this is 175 Stanley Street. And at this time, I'd like to welcome Dan Fitzgerald, our planner, to the meeting, and he will walk us through not only this report, but a number of reports tonight. So Dan, over to you.
Through the chair, thanks, Madam Mayor, and to all the members of the committee. So the purpose of this first report is to seek an amendment to a provisionally approved consent application, that being consent file B2/2021 from council, which is to sever a residential lot from an existing parcel of land in Lucan, which is located at 175 Stanley Street, with the effect of establishing a new residential lot that would accommodate the future construction of a single detached dwelling. So before I proceed, hopefully everyone can see that map there. As discussed at the April 20th, 2021 public meeting, the applicant is seeking to establish a new residential lot by severing the existing property at 175 Stanley Street. While provisionally approved, the applicant has requested to amend the original consent application by adding additional land to the severed portion, thereby removing land from the remnant parcel. So as requested, the amended severance would result in a lot with the same frontage as previously approved, but would add a portion of land, that being to the northwest interior side yard, as depicted on the location map and severance sketch, which was attached to the planning report. The revised proposal would add an additional 326 square meters to the severed parcel, resulting in a lot area of 1,540 square meters, while the remnant parcel would lose the equivalent amount, resulting in a lot area of 1,673 square meters. Based on the revised proposal, both lots are capable of maintaining the minimum required frontage and lot areas of the residential first density, or R1 zone. So in review of the provincial policy statement, county official plan, as well as the local official plan, planning staff did find that the revised proposal does meet the intent of the aforementioned document. Given the proposed parameters of the lot would meet the existing zoning standards in terms of frontage and area, it does represent good opportunity for infill development. This type of development technically is the preferred form, as it promotes more efficient uses of land and infrastructure while reducing the need for settlement expansion. As noted to council, the original conditions have been revised to respect the new request. And I would note that there was an administrative error on the original consent application with respect to the parkland dedication fee. It has been revised as part of this application, and the applicant is aware of that. So given the above, planning staff recommend that the subject application be approved, subject to the conditions that are outlined in the planning report. So thank you, and I'm certainly available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Dan. Are there any questions or comment from the committee at this time? We are joined by the applicants, and I don't know whether Mike or Jody, you have any comment to make at this time?
No, I don't.
Great, thank you. Council, any questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Manders.
I'm just curious just how that error was caught, and would there be a chance that errors aren't caught? So I'm glad that it was caught. It is just interesting that it got caught, and is there chances that that doesn't get caught?
I don't know who wants to tackle that. The one who caught the error, or?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Manders. So I do admit I did make the administrative error on that one. I unfortunately included the cost of another municipality as part of the condition on that one. However, our deputy clerk was diligent in reviewing that and catching that error.
Oh, which is fine, but it is possible then for that to go unnoticed then.
Through the chair, it technically, I guess, could be possible, but we do our best, obviously, to catch those errors as we see them.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious if there was a final check and balance at the end of a project or something. So no, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so you do have a recommended motion in front of you. I'm not going to read the whole thing because there are a number of conditions that are attached with the motion. But as Dan said, he is recommending that the application, consent application, be granted. And as I say, there are 10 conditions that apply to that. They can be found in our minutes and on the agenda for anybody wanting to go back and review that. At this time, I would ask for a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Hodgins. All opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, now I do need a mover and a seconder for the Committee of Adjustments to rise and move into a public meeting under Section 34 of the Planning Act. And this is to consider a number of applications in front of us. So if I can get a mover and a seconder for that, Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. So now we are sitting as a public meeting. The zoning bylaw amendment application has to do with the same address, but over to you, Dan. It is a little bit different on.
So thanks, Madam Mayor and members of council. So as the mayor did note, the proposed application is to provide council with a recommendation to consider the continued use of an existing accessory building structure on the subject land for up to 3 years while a new single unit dwelling is being constructed. So again, I'll throw up the map there so everyone can see. This is the parcel under discussion here. It is the same one as previously alluded to. The subject property is a 0.79 acre parcel, which is located on the east side of Stanley Street on the southeast corner of the intersection at Stanley and Walnut. The property currently contains a single detached dwelling and accessory building and maintains its own access to Stanley Street and is also on private services. So as a condition of consent decision B 7/2021 as just passed, the applicant is required to either remove or seek approval for an existing accessory building, given that once a certificate of consent is issued by the municipality, it would no longer be considered accessory to the existing home. Knowing this, the applicant has concurrently applied for a temporary use zoning bylaw amendment to permit the existing accessory structure to remain on the lands for a period of up to 3 years, should a certificate of consent be issued and the lot be successfully severed. This would provide the applicant with a 3-year time frame to complete construction on a new home, at which time the accessory building could remain on the property as an accessory to the new principal use, being a new single detached dwelling. However, should the applicant or future owner not complete construction on the home within the 3-year time period for the temporary use agreement, the applicant would be required to demolish the structure at their own expense. So included as a requirement of the temporary use agreement is a $5,000 security deposit, which is refundable either once the building is removed or once the accessory building once again becomes accessory to a principal use, should the applicant or owner wish to maintain it on the property. The temporary use bylaw complies with Section 39 of the Planning Act. And so given the above, planning staff is of the opinion that the request is appropriate and represents good land use planning, as there would be no physical change to the lands since the accessory building already exists. The subject application is consistent with the PPS and is also in conformity with the county official plan and the township official plan. So as such, planning staff are recommending that the zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 12/2021 be approved, and that council execute the temporary use agreement, ensuring that accessory building will be removed after 3 years of the passing the date of the bylaw, should a single detached dwelling not be constructed on the land. Thank you, and I'm certainly available to answer any questions on this one.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Any questions from council? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question for Dan, if I may, please. So Dan, just in light of the fact that it's difficult for people sometimes to find construction materials sort of these times, if it gets past the 3, and it's just not specific to this application, but just for other people, for other residents as well. If, for example, they cannot complete that, can a resident ask for an extension of that without having to, I mean, if it's something like not within their own control?
Through the chair to Councillor Reagan. So the Planning Act does provide the opportunity to apply for extensions on temporary use zoning bylaw amendments. So you can extend them again for up to a 3-year period. So it kind of just can continuously keep extending them by 3-year periods. But at some point, you may say maybe it's not necessarily temporary beyond 3 years or 6 years or whatever it might be. So that's why they do require every 3 years to renew that, if council in this case believes that it is a temporary solution.
All right. Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council on this application? All right, then you've got a recommended motion in front of you, and I would ask for a mover and seconder on that one, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins. All opposed? And that's carried. We have a very similar application now that Dan will walk us through, and this is for ZBA-8-2021, the Damon residence on 35098 Mitchell Line. Dan?
Thanks, Mayor, and to members of the council. So the purpose and effect of this application is to provide a recommendation regarding a proposed temporary use zoning bylaw amendment, which would temporarily permit 2 single detached dwellings to remain on one parcel. The effect would be to allow for the owner to live in the current home while a new semi-detached dwelling is under construction. So as you can see here, the subject land is a 1 hectare parcel of land, which was the result of a surplus residence severance. It's located on the east side of Mitchell Line, more specifically southeast of the intersection at Mooresville Drive and Mitchell Line. And it's municipally known as 35098 Mitchell Line. The lands are zoned surplus dwelling zone in the township zoning bylaw, and they are designated agricultural in the township official plan. So as noted in the report, the township zoning bylaw allows for temporary uses for up to 3 years, which includes the construction of a second dwelling while retaining the existing dwelling under specified circumstances. The applicant in this case intends to live in the existing dwelling while the construction of the new home occurs on the lands. As a condition of the temporary use bylaw, the applicant is required to enter into a temporary use agreement, which is attached to the planning report. In the agreement, the applicant would be permitted to live in the existing dwelling while the new dwelling is under construction. The owner would then be required to remove the existing home within 6 months of occupancy of the new dwelling. Included in the is also the temporary use agreement is the requirement for a $5,000 security, which would ensure the removal of the existing home on the lands. And should the applicant not remove the home in accordance with the agreement, the township would be permitted to initiate the removal of the existing home at the owner's expense. The proposed temporary use bylaw is consistent with the requirements of Section 9 of the Planning Act, 39 of the Planning Act. Additionally, the proposal does meet the requirements as stipulated in the county and local official plan. So given the above, planning staff does recommend that the temporary use bylaw be approved and that council execute the temporary use agreement. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Dan. Any questions on this application? Then I would ask for a mover and a seconder on the recommended motion that's in front of you. Councillor Westman and a seconder, Councillor Regan. All opposed? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, the next one on our agenda is the zoning bylaw application ZBA-11-2021 and draft plan of subdivision 39T-LB2101 for Landia Developments owner for part lot 29 concession 5 on Sainsbury Line. Before I hand it over to Dan, I just kind of wanted to walk through the process for this portion of the meeting. We have a number of attendees who are on the call that will have the opportunity to make public comment. So what will happen first is, I believe Dan is going to walk us through his report and what he's presenting to council tonight. And then Landia Developments has asked to present a PowerPoint presentation to council. So we will go through that. And then I will open up the discussion to the members of the public that have registered for the meeting. And what I will do is, anybody familiar with this format, there's a list of all the attendees that are here, and I will just call you by name. So if I call your name, you can unmute yourself, you'll be pulled up into the meeting. And if you want to offer public comment at that time, then will be the time to do that. And if you don't want to offer public comment, you can just politely say you have nothing to offer at this point. And we'll just go through the list that way. I think that's the most efficient way to work through the list. There is a phone number on my attendee list. When we get to that number, I will just ask for the participant name just for the public record on that, because we don't have record of who the phone number belongs to. So I hope that's clear to everybody. If not, we'll work our way through it together. At this time, I'll hand it over to Dan.
So through the mayor to all members of council, the report before council tonight is to fulfill the public meeting requirement for subdivision application 39T-LB2102 and the concurrent zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 11/2021 for a subdivision proposed by Landia Developments. So the applicant's proposed draft plan of subdivision, which is by Landia Developments, does encompass a land area that is approximately 2.91 hectares or 7.19 acres, and does include the following items: at 27 building lots for single detached dwellings, 2 blocks adjacent to Sainsbury Line intended for medium density development. They're designed conceptually for 24 3-story townhomes divided across 4 buildings, 2 new road allowances in the format of local streets, an 8-meter wide servicing easement for the purpose of accommodating a stormwater management outlet, and a temporary turning circle, as well as 4 blocks which are represented as 0.3 meter or 1 foot reserves, which restrict access to remnant or neighboring lands outside of the subdivision. The subject property as a whole is approximately 17.4 hectares or 43.1 acres in area, and is located on Sainsbury Line adjacent or east of Kent Avenue and Sainsbury Line intersection. Subject to the application, the proposed development would consist of lands with an approximate area, as noted as 2.91 hectares, that are interpreted by the applicant to be within the settlement boundary of Lucan. The remainder of lands, which represents 14.5 hectares, noted above, are outside of the settlement area and do not formulate part of this application. The lands are bordered by single detached dwellings, by a single detached dwelling and agricultural lands to the north. Agricultural lands to the east, township-owned property, which contains a regional stormwater management pond, and vacant land to the south. And existing residential subdivision in the format of low-density single-family homes. The lands within the settlement area are designated settlement area, urban and community in the Middlesex County official plan, residential in the township of Lucan Biddulph's official plan, and are zoned a future residential FR zone in the local zoning bylaw. The lands outside of the settlement area are designated agricultural in the county official plan, as well as the local official plan, and they are zoned general agricultural A1 zone in the township zoning bylaw. So as noted in the report, the applicant is requesting draft plan approval for 27 single detached residential lots, 2 blocks for medium density residential. The proposal would also consider the establishment of 2 roads, an 8-meter wide easement for a stormwater outlet, a temporary turning circle, as well as 4 blocks for reserve restrict access. The primary servicing reports provided by the applicant indicate that water would be brought into the site from an existing water main located on the west side of the boulevard of Saintsbury line. An on-site gravity-fed sanitary system would extend through the site, cross Saintsbury line, and connect into the existing manhole at the east end of Kent Avenue. On-site stormwater controls would outlet through an easement into a new regional stormwater facility, which would be proposed to be located on the township-owned lands to the south. And in order to accommodate the request, the applicant has also submitted a request for 3 separate zones for the subject lands. As depicted on the concept plan, the lands to the west abutting Saintsbury line are proposed to be a site-specific residential 3rd density exception zone. Although proposed as townhouses, the proposed zoning would accommodate any of the following potential uses: apartment dwellings, multi-unit dwellings, senior citizen dwellings, as well as townhouse dwellings. And so as proposed in the applicant's submission, it would consider reduction to the standard maximum lot coverage from 40% to 50%, reductions to the front yard setback requirement from 8 meters to 6 meters, an increase to the maximum permissible height from 10 meters to 12 meters, and just a clarification on no interior side yard requirement between attached townhouse dwelling units. The lands further east on the concept plan are proposed to be a site-specific residential 2nd density exception zone. The permitted use of the R2 zone include converted dwellings, duplex dwellings, home occupations, semi-detached dwellings, as well as single detached units. As proposed in the applicant's submission, the site-specific exceptions include the following: an increase to the maximum permitted lot coverage from 40% to 45%. And the remnant farmlands are also proposed to be rezoned in this case, which would permit a reduced frontage requirement from 150 meters to 30 meters, and a reduced lot area from 40 hectares to 14 hectares. So the Middlesex County official plan identifies Lucan as a settlement area and does defer to the municipal official plan to delineate the boundaries of the settlement area. The lands subject to the application are within settlement area of Lucan and are designated residential within the township of Lucan Biddulph's official plan. Planning staff have reviewed the proposal against the PPS, the county official plan, as well as the township of Lucan Biddulph official plan. Several policies have been identified in the planning report, which will be utilized to prepare a further recommendation for council at a future meeting. Generally, the PPS county official plan and local official plan all state that development shall be focused in existing settlement areas and promote appropriate mixes of density and housing types beyond low density single detached dwellings. More specifically, section 1.1.1 of the PPS does speak to the establishing and promoting healthy, livable, and safe communities by promoting efficient development land use patterns, accommodating an appropriate affordable and market-based range and a mix of residential and employment types, as well as promoting the integration of land use planning, growth management, intensification, and infrastructure planning to minimize land consumption and servicing costs. Additionally, sections 1.1.3.1 through 1.1.3.4 speak to settlement areas being the focus of growth and development. They promote development that efficiently uses land and resources, are appropriate for existing infrastructure and public services, that accommodate a range of housing options through redevelopment and intensification, and promote appropriate development standards, which facilitate intensification, redevelopment, and compact form that avoids and mitigates risks to public health. Section 1.1.3.6 further clarifies that new development taking place is in designated growth areas should occur adjacent to existing built-up area and shall have a compact form, mixes of uses and densities that allow efficient use of land, infrastructure, as well as public services. Further, section 1.4 of the PPS also speaks to housing and the requirements to provide a range and mix of housing options and densities necessary to meet the projected requirements of the current and future residents. While section 1.5 does speak to the establishing healthy and active communities by public planning streets and spaces to be safe and to meet the needs of pedestrians, while also fostering social interaction and community connectivity. Likewise, county official plan does identify housing policies and provides general directions. More specifically, section 2.3.7 does encourage a wide variety of housing types, size, and tenure to meet projected demographic and market requirements, while also promoting intensification and redevelopment to occur in settlement areas where appropriate levels of physical services are available. The township official plan does provide more specific policies related to achieving growth and intensification. The residential designation in the township official plan, which is found in section 2.1.5, does direct the majority of population growth to occur within the village of Lucan. Sections 2.1.5.1, as well as 2.1.5.2, discuss the potential for residential development, noting primarily single detached dwellings. However, at the same time, it also recognizes that multiple forms of residential development will provide the potential for more affordable housing, as well as housing more able to meet the needs, increasingly of diverse needs and preferences of the community moving forward. Additionally, sections 2.1.5.3 speak to the review criteria for subdivisions, and 2.1.5.5 speaks to the medium density being encouraged to locate where direct and proximate access to arterial or collector roads are available, where there are close to commercial areas, schools, and parks, and where municipal services are readily available. Further, section 2.1.5.6 also requires development to incorporate a range of housing types as well as densities. So notice of the application was circulated to agencies as well as property owners in accordance with the Planning Act requirements. The township will continue to receive correspondence from stakeholders as well as agencies. Of note are comments provided by residents within the area. There has been concerns that have been raised, which I won't really get into at this point because we're here to hear from the public tonight, as well as from the applicant regarding their proposal. So given the above, staff are recommending that council do receive the planning report as information, and I'm certainly available to answer any questions that may come up.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Dan. Before I hand it over to the applicant to present the PowerPoint that they wanted to share with us, I just want to confirm, even after this meeting, you will still be collecting public comment. So if there was somebody that couldn't have joined, they can still submit a written submission.
Through the chair to the mayor, yes, that's correct. Anyone that wasn't unable to join tonight or has not submitted comment yet, we will still receive comments moving forward.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, at this time, I would like to, and I don't know who's going to walk us through, but welcome representatives for the applicant, Hannah Shirtlift, Jay McGuffin, and I believe Michael Frisia is on as well. So I don't know, and I think, Ron, are you going to share the screen? And I see somebody's hand up. Whose hand is up? I see Jay Fleury.
That's right. I'm here with Southside as well.
You're here with Southside as well? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay. Just what's your first name, just so we can get that in the record?
Jason.
Jason? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
So I'll hand it over to Landia or representatives from Monteith Brown. I don't know who's going to walk us through this part.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's Jay McGuffin, Vice President and Principal Planner for Monteith Brown.
Great. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you. And Ron, thank you for forwarding the presentation or working through the presentation for us as we go through this brief overview of the project. Thank you to Mr. Fitzgerald for basically providing the nuts and bolts of what we're doing. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to run through a couple of slides. Perhaps we could jump to the next slide. Just sort of an explanation of who we are. Landia Developments are our client, and they are a subsidiary of Southside Group in London. So a very large, experienced land developer with over 40 years of development and construction experience. And they have acquired the subject property and are before you this evening with their development proposal. In terms of who we are, Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, I believe we are known to the municipality. I've had the opportunity to go through your Parks and Recreation Master Plan that we authored back in 2015. So we have done work for the municipality. We've also done some previous land development in the area on a couple of subdivisions. And we're very pleased to be back presenting to you this evening on behalf of our client. And as you have also discovered, so Hannah Shirtliff is with me. She's a planner who's been heavily involved in the day-to-day on this. She's with our firm, Monteith Brown Planning. Michael Frisia, as you've mentioned, is the proponent. He is here to respond to any questions that may come up that he needs to speak to. And Mr. Fleury from Development Engineering is also here. And we've asked Jason to join us because there were a couple of servicing related questions and comments that came up through the privately initiated public consultation that we held back on the 9th of September. Just in moving through, if I could move to the next slide. Just from the planning context, just visually what Dan walked council through and the public. This is sort of the relationship. So the previous image that was on the screen was sort of an underlay of what the subdivision design looks like in the context of that red line that's in front of you on the screen right now. And you'll note that the red line extends far to the east. And Mr. Fitzgerald sort of identified that overall 17 hectares of land is the land contained within the red boundary. That's the overall subject lands, one contiguous parcel. But that the application before council tonight from a subdivision perspective is limited to the land identified in that blue rectangle, which is within the settlement area boundary of Lucan and designated for residential development in that yellow tone. This is an excerpt from your official plan or your policy document setting out future land use. About 2.9 hectares of land are within that blue rectangle. So a fairly small, arguably infill development is before council this evening. And there is also a supplementary or complementary zoning bylaw amendment, which applies not only to that blue rectangle, but also to the red subject property in the lands that extend beyond the settlement area. And that's technical in nature, just to respond to bylaw requirements for minimum lot frontage and minimum lot area, which will change as a result of the proposed subdivision. If I could get the next slide, Ron. Just a neighborhood context drawing. Everyone, I'm assuming, is far more familiar than we are in terms of what these particular key areas or points of interest are throughout Lucan. One helpful relationship in this diagram, however, is that circle number 1 immediately north of the blue shaded area, which is the lands that are proposed for the subdivision that we're discussing this evening. And those are the lands that are being proposed for development by Timber Ridge. And I'll talk to you a little bit later on the efforts that have been made to coordinate access from the subject property into that developing Timber Ridge subdivision to the north, as well as some of the other developing subdivisions at 3 and 6 in that sort of taupe color. That's a good example of where much of the development activity is currently occurring in Lucan at this time. Next slide, please. So this brings us to the draft, the formal draft plan or the draft plan proper. In terms of the layout, as Mr. Fitzgerald had identified, we're looking at 2 townhome blocks. You'll see those 2 large blocks on the westerly edge, immediately abutting Saintsbury line. And the reason and the rationale for providing those 2 blocks there, Saintsbury line being County Road 47, is the highest order road in the area, the most traffic. And a common practice in land use planning is to utilize your denser development forms adjacent your heavier activity corridors. And so the gateway into this subdivision was envisioned to be these two blocks. There would be a total of 4 townhome structures or buildings, and a total of 12 units, so 6 per building, 6 units per building, 4 buildings in total on 2 blocks for a total of 24 townhomes. So a mirror image on the north and the south side of that proposed Street A. Again, recognizing this is the gateway, this will set the tone for the proposed development. Through our privately initiated public consultation, we heard a lot of concerns about locating the townhomes at this end of the development and not moving them far away and tucking them in the back of the development. Again, from a land use planning and urban design perspective, it's our opinion the appropriate location for that form is along Saintsbury Line, is to address the sort of the gateway into the community, and is to serve as a transitional land use away from the higher activity that is anticipated along Saintsbury Line. Following through that, there are 27 single detached lots, approximately 40-foot frontages and 140 feet of depth. And you'll see that there is 2 proposed streets, Street A being the east-west connector to Saintsbury Line, terminating in what is hoped to believe to be a temporary turning circle that would at some time in the future open up to opportunities to extend development easterly, if at all possible, as well as a proposed Street B running in the north-south axis to the north. And that is proposed to tie into, I believe I can't remember the street letter, D or H or something, in the abutting Timber Ridge subdivision. So we have aligned that to coordinate access between the 2 subdivisions. And if I could get the next slide. So here's our Landea Developments subdivision outlined in blue on the right-hand side. I'll draw your attention to the north arrow. It didn't quite fit on the slide appropriately in the true north-south axis. So we are looking at this a bit sideways. Saintsbury Line is running from left to right at the bottom of the screen. And you'll see that the Street B on our plan up at the top ties into what looks like, my eyes are getting bad, I think that's Street D. But we've made provision to have those 2 line up for that to provide connectivity between the 2 developments. You'll also notice the medium density block in that Timber Ridge subdivision, the large block in the interior, and how it also draws towards Saintsbury Line, drawing on the same planning principles in terms of stepping that higher order of development out to the county road. Next slide, please. So basically, just in speaking to range and mix, just high-level planning that Dan had already alluded to, talking about the provision of low and medium density dwellings to provide long-term needs in the community. One thing we find in some of our smaller satellite communities around larger urban centers is a predominant reliance historically on single detached dwellings. One of the challenges as communities begin to age and as land values continue to increase, the ability for affordable home ownership opportunities within the community start to decrease. This has been occurring in the GTA communities for more than a decade, and the land use pressures have now started to ripple out into Middlesex County, and we're seeing the same effect. Land values are dramatically increasing, making it far more difficult for people to live in the communities. And if we don't provide that range and mix of housing as required through the provincial policy statement, it forces a lot of people that cannot afford to own their own single detached dwelling on a sizable lot in the community to seek housing elsewhere outside of the community. So it provides opportunity for housing for all stages of life. We know that the number of single person households is rising across Canada, and increasing density, supply, and product choice As we've identified by some of the headlines in the local newspaper lately, talking about small towns providing a golden opportunity for a comeback in housing during the pandemic. We're talking about average home prices. This one's actually dated February 2021, and I think our latest information is out that we're now exceeding 650,000 average home price, which is up significantly from years back when that number was in the 300s, and it wasn't that many years ago. And again, CMHC coming forward in July, just recently indicating the best way to combat soaring housing prices is building new housing. So, this isn't just us coming forward as the land use planners for the proponent. This is, as articulated, this is at all levels of government in terms of the housing crisis that we're facing across the province. And many of our small town clients and small town communities that we're working in on behalf of private interests are finding a need to increase that range and mix of housing so they can continue to provide opportunities for people to live and flourish in their own communities. Next slide, please. Mr. Fitzgerald also spoke to about the zoning. This is essentially a breakdown graphically of what he's already gone through. The A1 zone, as I mentioned, the special permissions in the A1 are just to recognize the reduced frontage of down to 30 meters, where I believe 150 is currently required in the A1 zone. And then to bring your minimum lot area from 40 hectares down to, I think it's 13 or 14 hectares, whatever is left over from the subdivision. So again, just a technical amendment to the zoning to permit that. The R2 zoning, this is the zoning that's proposed to permit the single detached dwellings and provides for a special provision to deal with the coverage, as Dan alluded to. And then the R3 zoning, and this R3 zoning was identified because it is the zoning in your bylaw that permits townhouse dwellings. And we have requested a special provision to address an increase in coverage on this block as well, consistent with all of our residential applications inside the City of London and all throughout southwestern Ontario. Trying to essentially do more with less land because of the rising costs of land values. So we're seeing increasing land coverage or land coverages because we're reducing lot frontages in order to make marketable, attainable housing. And one additional request on this block is to increase the height from 10 to 12 meters to allow for the contemplation of a 3-story street fronting townhome in this area. And if we could go to the next slide, please. Some of the questions that came in related to what types of work, background work was done. We pre-consulted with the municipality and the county prior to undertaking the works, and there were requirements of a number of studies. That included an archaeological assessment, which was undertaken, and no resources were found. An application for clearance from the ministry initiated. Traffic brief was undertaken, and no concerns were identified regarding safe trip generation. In fact, the number of trips that were identified as being driven were less than half of what normally would be required to initiate a traffic study. There was also a geotechnical investigation and hydrogeological assessments underdone. That confirmed that dwellings can be developed with basements. We didn't have any issues with regard to high water table. Soils were acceptable for the development. If I could get the next slide. There was also servicing studies that were completed. So that looked at water, sanitary, and stormwater. And Mr. Fleury is here to be able to speak in greater detail to any questions in regard to this information. But again, water proposed to connect to an existing 250-meter water main in the West Boulevard of Saintsbury line, an internal gravity sanitary sewer system to the Chestnut Street pumping station, and the stormwater management tributary to the regional stormwater management facility for Timber Ridge flows conveyed to the Whitfield municipal drain. Stormwater runoff is to be handled on site, and post-development peak flow rates will be limited to the pre-development levels for storm events. And this is further to some commentary that we received from one of the neighboring landowners concerned about storm flows and ensuring that there was no backup onto their property. This is confirmation. Post-development flows have to match pre-development flows. And what that means is we can't change that flow event rate and allow water to back up onto other people's properties. And we have confirmed through our engineer that there is sufficient capacity for water, sanitary, and stormwater servicing for the proposed development. Next slide, please. Just adding schematics to what I just spoke to. This is for the benefit of the public. We didn't have these available in our meeting, and this just illustrates, so the blue line here is how the water is going to conceptually be routed. Again, that westerly boulevard is the existing water main, and we'll be tapping in through the extension of Street A across Saintsbury line into that water main and extending water down into the subdivision. Next slide, please. Similarly, this is how sanitary services are proposed to come in through the subdivision up Saintsbury line up to Kent Avenue. Next slide, please. And similarly, this is just identifying the placement of the stormwater sewers and the direction and flow path of those stormwater sewers within. So you'll note within those dashed green lines, you'll also see arrows. So on Street A, flows are moving from west going to east to that centralized point or catchment manhole at Street B at the intersection. Flows will be coming south from Timber Ridge through Street B into our system and transferring through that system south through an easement to the regional stormwater management block immediately south of the property. And then you'll see that temporary turnaround circle will be draining westerly into that same catchment and then south into the regional facility. Next slide, please. Well, that's it. That sort of is, in summary, our presentation to council this evening. I would be more than happy to answer any questions or defer any responses to any members on our team this evening, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for that, Jay. I think what we'll do is we'll open it up to questions or comments from the public that have joined, and then council will have their opportunity to kind of listen to what the public said and then maybe circle back to you for any questions or comments that they've got on what was presented. So with that, I guess Lisa's kind of in charge of our attendees. Did you want to bring everybody in? Is that how that has to work?
Yeah, I can bring them all in at once.
Okay. Yeah. And then I'm just going to go through the list as it appears in front of me. I'll ask if there's any comment or question from the members of the public who have registered for this meeting.
Yes, I will have questions. This is Diane Morrison.
Okay, I'm going to call upon each participant as they appear on my list.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Morrison. Okay, is that everybody, Lisa?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so the first one I've got in front of me is Beth Cowdray. And Beth, did you want to offer any comment at this point? I know that you've submitted something in writing, but is there anything that you wanted for this meeting to be documented?
We do not feel really there is any place for three-story townhomes in Lucan, especially among single homes. In the old Clover subdivision, I don't see any medium density areas there. It's a very large subdivision with a lot of green space that really adds to it. It was mentioned that the townhomes are at the front because of a traffic flow. Olivia mentioned at our last meeting, September 9th, that there are 24 residences in the townhomes, and then the 27 single homes, which is almost the same. So actually, you might get more vehicles, we find, in the single homes, as there is more room there for parking than in the townhomes. And so we don't really see the concern with the traffic flow with putting the townhomes at the front. The one floor condos at the end of Canton Walnut Street are very popular with everyone. And if one of them does go on sale, it sells very quickly. They look good. But of course, they use up more space. But as a part is affordable, we believe they are affordable. But in this way, I think that we're packing more residences into small spaces, like from the north of us at Saintsbury on Miller Avenue. And it just seems to be, be a problem with snow removal and more things like that. Those are just some of our comments.
Okay, thank you for that. Next one I have is Blake Van Berlo. I don't know whether that's Blake or Olivia that's joining us. Did you want to make comment at this time?
Hello, yes, thank you so much, Council, for the opportunity to deliver comments on this proposal. We actually have, I guess, 4 separate comments. I don't know if we should present them individually and receive, I guess, responses afterwards, or should I go through and present all 4 up front?
Just present your comments at this time.
Sure, thank you very much.
Great,
okay,
thanks.
So I guess the first comment that we have, it's more of a question, I guess, as to why the townhomes need to be 12 meters high instead of 10 meters high, because there's this zoning exemption that the proposing here. My wife and I would be the direct neighbors of this development, and I just fear for there's potential privacy concerns. These are going to be very large, towering buildings, and there really aren't too many buildings of that height in Lucan that are in the single detached residential developments. So my second question actually is highly related, and it is, why is it that the developers have requested so many exemptions that in effect allow them to build on a smaller lot area? Like, they want to increase the lot area coverage, they want to decrease the distance from the road to the developments. It just sounds like the bottom line is being prioritized here, potentially over the environmental well-being of the region, as plant covered space will be greatly reduced by having these percentages increased. And then the third comment that I have is kind of it's in regards to the developer's claim that the townhomes should be placed closer to Saintsbury line because it's an arterial road. And so that claim, the claim that these should be placed closer to arterial roads because of, I guess, municipal requirements and preferences, it's actually false. And there is a blatant counterexample of that, which they actually showed in their presentation, which is Timber Ridge. It wasn't detailed in the image that was shown on to all the participants on the Zoom call, but the townhomes going in Timber Ridge are actually going to be much farther of a drive to Saintsbury line than many, actually most, of the single detached dwellings. I just find it interesting that they use that as a precedent to support why the townhome should be closer to Saintsbury line, when in terms of driving distance, the ones in Timber Ridge are going to be significantly farther from that arterial road. And I guess the other interesting thing is that as for the most recent plan, the high density area of this area will only be accessible via those peripheral roads and not via Saintsbury line. I just want to make that known to everybody on this call. And then I guess my last comment is more of the fact that, or a question is, will these homes actually be affordable, especially the townhomes? I know that the idea is to offer a diversity of price points so that the market can be more accessible to those who can't pay for single detached lots. But when we look at the prices on realtor.ca of the townhomes for sale near Gilmore Drive, they're listed for $540,000 or more. And that's very close to that average that Landy Developments just reported of $600,000 in the London region. So I don't know. I question the affordability of the price point of these homes, particularly the townhomes. Could developments potentially offer a projection of what the listing price of these homes will be? And then furthermore, will these townhomes be appropriate for young families or seniors? That's all I had to say. Thank you very much for hearing my comments and questions.
Okay, thanks, Blake. I think what we'll do is we'll get all of the public comment, and I'm sure through discussion between the applicant and council, these questions will be addressed at some point. And I've made note of them, so we can circle back to those. Next, I have Diane Morrison, and I know that you would like to speak, Ms. Morrison.
Yes, I have the same concerns as all the other residents around here. And I just feel that the townhomes you're proposing and all the exceptions you're making to the bylaws, like to make them higher, etc. And you're talking about that's comparable to London, development in London, etc., etc. That's an urban area. We are still a rural area. We aren't really competing with London. This whole idea of the traffic, and well, number one, six meters for the parking is ridiculous. We've already got problems back in the new subdivision by the school. We've got garbage collection problems because the cars are on the street. We got snow removal problems because the cars are on the street. It just goes on and on. Cars are parking everywhere. So if you get cars parking out on Saintsbury line because there's nowhere else for them to go, is the town prepared to enforce our parking bylaws and keep them off that main artery? The water, I'm still not convinced about your water. You're saying on your little map there that the water is going to look like, to me, flow from east to west. That is all uphill. On the subdivision back by Gibson, there was mountains of dirt that had to be stripped off that land for the water to flow west, to go to the arteries to the west instead of all the water flowing towards the road. How are you going to get the water over on this subdivision to flow away from the road? Are you going to be stripping land like you did up the road on the other subdivision and making a mountain of dirt? How are you going to get the water away from our homes?
I want to interrupt you for just 1 second, Diane. I want to make sure that we're talking about the same water. Are you talking about storm water?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Rainwater, stormwater that has to go into drains, and it has to somehow get to your water management pond.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that that's what we were
That's
speaking
not
about.
the way the water all flows. The water flows to the west, the northwest. So how are you going to change the direction of that? And you're talking about the catch basin here at the corner of Kent Ave, and it has capacity. It does not have capacity. I don't quite understand your water management. And that concerns me.
Okay. Is that it?
No, I have one more question. So
Okay.
if we're making exceptions to the height of these buildings, are our fire trucks even adequate for that? Or are we going to have to lay out money for fire trucks? Like, there is only so much that our local fire trucks can do with regards to height. How is that?
Okay.
Are our fire trucks adequate to reach that meter of a building?
Well, I think that's been answered in a previous public meeting at 12 meters, but I'm looking for the CAO for nod, but we are confident in our fire coverage from our fire departments for that.
Okay.
Okay.
I would like someone to answer my question about the water.
Okay, we'll circle, like I said to Mr. Van Berlo, that we'll circle back to the applicant after we've collected all the public comments. And as I said, I've made notes, so I'll make sure that we can get these concerns addressed. Okay. Okay, next I have Jordan Quick.
Hello, yes, I'd like to make a few comments as well. I sent most of you a letter addressing some concerns a couple weeks ago.
And just to make note for anybody watching that has been included in Dan's report. That's formed part of the report tonight. Any correspondence that we've received is part of the report and is public comment. So.
Okay. Our first concern is the main entrance into the subdivision. It's located directly across from our home, which is 34077. And it is also halfway between Duchess Ave and Kent Ave. Now, if you look at past developments in our area and other areas similar, most of the time, new developments line up with adjacent streets that are already there. Now, I know this isn't part of their property, but the land directly to the south is township owned. Is it possible to have the entrance moved to line up with an adjacent street that's already there? Mainly because the traffic on Saintsbury, we have an industrial subdivision up to the north at Fallon. We have Picard's construction there. We have dump trucks flying up and down our road all the time. Now we have added this other intersection where the traffic on Saintsbury or our homes directly across, the homes that are using Kent Ave and Duchess Ave now have to look out for this increased traffic as well. If we make an intersection, at least then we have a direct sight of line across from each other. Another thing is, I agree with what everyone else has said so far. As far as the 3-story townhomes go, all the homes around are all mainly 1-story homes. Ours is a side split, so you could say it's a story and a half. Now, we're going to have these 3-story townhomes towering over Saintsbury line in all our homes. And the increased traffic in that area, like everyone else has said, the Miller Drive townhomes, it's a parking nightmare. And the developers want to put these right at the main entrance. All I can see is cars lining up and down the main road, blocking the single family homes in the back to try to get out, especially in the wintertime. And also, we're going to be getting half of the traffic from the Timber Ridge subdivision to the north if these subdivisions are connected by the Street B. And they also mentioned that they want to create homes for every stage of life. I don't think any elderly person would want to live in a 3-story townhome. And also, they want to make homes more affordable. They want to build affordable homes, 3-story townhomes. How is that more affordable than a 2-story townhome or a 1-story condo, which I think we need more of in this town as the age population is also increasing. We are welcoming many new families into our community, but there are a lot of old families here that want to stay here, and they want to downsize to a place that they can do that. One more comment is the pedestrian traffic. If this proposal goes ahead and the street is directly across from our driveway, is there going to be a crosswalk installed to our driveway, and everyone that is trying to walk out of that subdivision to try to get to the main part of Lucan or go to school, what's going to be done there? Is there a crosswalk being installed? Is there sidewalks up and down Saintsbury being installed? There's no street lights currently up that way.
The crosswalks.
My wife Jessica
Hi,
also
sorry.
has some comments.
I'm just thinking about all the kids who are going to be in the subdivisions having to cross over Sainsbury line to walk to school. Crosswalks in this community have already really proven to be unsafe. We stand on Main Street all the time waiting to cross, and it is very rare that we have a safe opportunity to. I can't hardly imagine getting my kids to school crossing Sainsbury line safely. And I guess what would the plan be for that? Like my husband Jordan said, there's tractors, transport trucks, dump trucks, everything flying down Sainsbury line. It is not a safe crossing zone. That would have to be very planned. What was your last concern?
I think that was all our comments for now.
Actually, I have one more comment. We talked about the green space. It was part of the last meeting. We were told that there was a financial gift to the community instead of green space being given, saying that families that will be buying these homes have great access to other parks in the area. Again, these kids are going to have to cross Sainsbury line. As a mom with 3 young kids, no way would I let them cross Sainsbury line to go to a park. They won't make it to Market Street to go play at that park. They won't be able to go to the school by themselves to play at that park. So green space, I do think, is an issue as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And we also appreciate the input from whoever the little one is on your lap. So that was good to hear. Michelle Thomas is next on my list.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. I'm on board with every comment everybody's had. I also submitted a letter to, I think, everybody. My further point is also with the townhomes, but I went on the Lucan website. The first sentence says, Lucan is a rural, picturesque farming community. How is a 3-story townhouse rural and picturesque and farming? That's all I really have to say further about the townhomes. Further, the frontage decrease in the new neighborhood. We have a problem on Duchess Ave. Sorry, I'm on the corner of Sainsbury and Duchess. We currently have a great problem down Duchess with vehicles parked, trailers, junk out on the street currently. So if we're decreasing frontage and most households have 2, if not 3 vehicles, we're rural, mostly trucks. Where are those people going to park if they have 3 vehicles because they have 3 people living in a townhouse so they can afford it? Parking is a huge concern. When there's any events out here, when we do have Bacon Fest, Sainsbury is a nightmare. That's just, for example, if we're having decreased frontage for parking, Sainsbury is going to be a nightmare. And there are a lot of kids in this neighborhood. That's another point, as well as I have a high belief that we need to blend R1 to R2 to R3 density in that neighborhood. Mashing R1 with R3 down to R2 is not pleasing to the eye. If anybody's driven down Fanshawe Park Road between Hyde Park and Wonderland, the condos out front look horrible because they're so tall. And then it bleeds into lower density housing further in. We're very afraid that's what it's going to look like here. Those are all my comments.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Michelle. Okay, so I appreciate all of the public comments at this time. And just a reminder that for anybody watching that we will still take written submissions for any other further public comment. But at this point, I'll open it up to council discussion. And then we'll circle back to the applicant one more time. So council comment or discussion. Councillor Reagan and then Deputy Mayor Manders to start.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I just had a couple of comments and questions, and I'm just sort of looking for some clarification. So one of the first points, if I may, is I think I'm just going to use first names. think Beth and Jordan brought up the traffic issue. And on the slide, it talked about there were no concerns. And I'm just thinking, who did the study? And there were no concerns, and by whom were there no concerns? I'm just a little, I'm worried about that. So it's just that not only just vehicle traffic, but I think someone also mentioned, I think it was Jordan, about pedestrian traffic as well along there. So I'm just wondering who did that study and what exactly were the findings? That would be one question I was going to ask. Would I just continue and I can just maybe get my answers after, Madam Mayor?
Sure.
With respect to, I think Blake and I think, I can't remember who the other resident was, talked a little bit about the park space as well. I also noticed, I think we had that discussion before about, yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Talked a little bit about the park space with those homes of probably 50 or so, around 50 residents, and probably, you know, if you just do the math, probably 120 people or so. I'm just wondering about that conversation about park space there, understanding crossing Saintsbury for the younger kids too. That was just sort of concern I had. So I'm just echoing that. The other question I had too that might come up down the road too, then although I can wait for the answer, of course, is Blake was talking about the diversity of housing. And I think someone else made the point as well about 3-story buildings. And as a senior myself and with bad knees, I'm not sure how inclined I would be to purchase something like that. So I'm just concerned about the diversity. So when and I'm just, again, just a question, but if we're talking about diversity in a 3-story or a 2-story for that matter, building, how appealing that would be to say somebody maybe like myself, and there's more and more of us in the community as well. And I think I'll just leave it for there and I'll let the Deputy Mayor go. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. All right. Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, for myself, there's been a lot of questions asked, and I'm going to wait till the very end. Then if this is how you're going to run it, just ask questions, and then the very end, I'm going to wait till the end when the questions are answered, and then I have
okay. Okay, maybe if I look to council, if you're comfortable, maybe the applicants can address some of the issues that were brought up by the public, and then I can circle back to council. Or I look to, can see Jaden nodding his head, Alex nodding his head. Okay, so Mr. McGuffin, there's been a number of questions that have been posed to the by the public, and I know I've got a quick note of all of them, as I'm sure you do. So I'll hand it over to you to maybe run through some of the issues that have been brought up. And certainly if we feel that anything's been missed, I know myself or my colleagues will be able to pipe in as to maybe an area that might be missed. So I'll hand it back over to you, Mr. McGuffin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. So I think working in reverse, I've got a lot of comments here. I think I'll start with Councillor Regan's comments and then work back into the public comments because there's some crossover. So working down the 4 questions by Councillor Regan, traffic, who did the study? It was done by IBI Group. It concluded that there were no notable impacts to the traffic, and it was completed in May 2021. And
I just add as well, Jay, that the scope of the study was confirmed or discussed with township and county staff as well before they started it. So just in terms of what was covered.
Thanks, Anne. The second comment had to do with park space, and this ties into, I believe, questions by Mr. Quick and his wife as well. First, for clarity, at no time did I say it was a financial gift. The words I used were cash in lieu of parkland, which is a legislated term under the Planning Act. And that's a term that's available to a municipality when it makes a determination that parkland as land is not appropriate in a certain area for parkland. And it was our understanding through our pre-consultation, the municipality was not desirous in receiving parkland. And I assume that's for a number of reasons. One, And I've just reviewed this in our Parks and Recreation Master Plan prepared for the municipality. I think it's on page 89, where it specifically directs that no parks should be taken or that parkland should be discouraged where it's less than half an acre in size. That corresponds to the position and the information I provided to the public at the public meeting on September the 9th, when I indicated that the limited size of this subdivision did not create a sizable amount of land. Having had the opportunity since that meeting to actually do the math, the land area, the 5% land area that the municipality is entitled through the Planning Act is 0.1 hectares. So a very small amount of land. And I believe that is why the municipality chose to require the proponent to provide cash in lieu of parkland. And for the benefit of the members of the public, what that means is those monies that are provided are based on an evaluation in accordance with the statutory requirements of the Planning Act in terms of what the land's value is the day before the passing of the approval of the draft plan. And those monies are collected by the municipality and put in a reserve for parks and recreation purposes. And that money then would be redirected. This is obviously for the benefit of the public and not for council, be redirected to other park facilities to supplement and implement things that are occurring in that location. I do know that the regional stormwater management facility that's immediately south of our clients' lands are located on a large municipally owned block, and that there are lands that are not part of that facility. And I don't know what the municipality has in terms of its plans for additional parkland in this area. Certainly, the municipality has the right to take parkland here. From our position, the amount of land that would be taken is contrary to their policies and wouldn't amount to much land from a usable perspective in context with the overall development of this area, particularly given the sizable development area of the Timber Ridge subdivision to the north. Crossing the street, I would have to defer that back to the municipality. External street crossings are in the municipality's domain, and that would probably be in concert with the county as well, as Saintsbury Line is County Road 47, and they would have to work in concert with the county engineer for that. In terms of comments about diversity, I think there's a little bit of confusion. We're not talking about the 3-story townhome being the sole provider of diversity. In accordance with provincial policy, diversity is achieved through the provision of a variety and a range of housing types and opportunities. By providing the 3-story towns, we are contributing to the diversity of the housing product available to the community. There was a comment about housing for seniors. There's nothing that's stating that the single detached lots on the interior of the subdivision are going to be 2 stories or all 2 stories. They have zoning permissions to allow that, but just like in any traditional residential subdivision, if a property owner wants to purchase a single-story dwelling, it can do so. And one of the reasons, the very specific reason that we've asked for a minor increase in the coverage is to account for just that, so that we don't have to provide larger land areas, which result in exponential land costs to purchasers to be able to put a single-story footprint of a meaningful size on that lot. And that's the same response on the medium density block as well. And my comment was not that we were basing our proposal on City of London standards, but on the standards of all of the surrounding municipalities. For example, Thorndale and Dorchester. I can name just as 2 recent development applications that have gone forward. I'm representing 3 developments in Dorchester, all of them with similar proposals. And one other thing to remind council and the community is that quite often the design standards that exist in a comprehensive zoning bylaw have their roots in quite dated nomenclature from a development perspective. What we're seeing across the province is a departure on how we look at the use of our lands and making better use of our lands by not forcing the dwelling to have to become smaller or undesirable just so we can fit it on what is an affordable parcel of land. We've gotten into compact urban form. We've gotten into efficient use of land, two primary tenets of the provincial policy statement. And the rubber hits the road in our zoning bylaw provisions. So there's nothing that has been brought forward. In fact, what's been brought forward here is nowhere near as what was intensive that in an application that's going forward in Dorchester, scheduled to come to the public on the 19th of October. A very comparable type community to Lucan is why I'm making reference to those specific jurisdictions. There were a bunch of other comments. Some of them are comments, not questions. So 3-story townhouses and the individual wants 1 floor. Again, the 3-story towns are just contributory to a range and mix. There is options to build 1-story on this proposed subdivision, and I'm sure there'll be quite a range and mix in the abutting Timber Ridge subdivision. Why 12 meters in height? The 12 meters is driven because height is typically taken to the midpoint of the roof line. And we have a challenge in that we're not proposing to build flat roof structures. And so the increase of 2 meters in the traditional 10 that's permitted is to allow for the ridge and roof line structures on those townhouse dwellings. Why so many exemptions was the next question. I don't believe there were many exemptions. As I mentioned, the exemptions were for coverage. I explained why. And that is typically because traditional, typical zone provisions in municipal zoning bylaws have not yet caught up to current development standards, particularly in the last 4 years as a result of the tremendous increase in valuation. Will they be affordable? Again, we don't, in our public meeting that we had with the community that was not required, it was not part of the statutory process. We indicated that there's confusion in terms of affordability, and we often like to refer to it as attainable. And what is being proposed here is a reduction in lot frontages from what you would typically see in this type of a rural urban community. Historically, you would look back, 50-foot frontages might be what the community has been used to developing on, reducing that down to 40-foot frontages. Land is purchased on the foot front, so if we get down into smaller frontages, that reduces the land cost significantly in terms of the end user. Also, in terms of the provision of the townhomes, sorry, I just lost my place in my list here, provides for an expanded range. And I know one of the gentlemen mentioned that he was making reference to a townhome in some place being 500,000 and then making a comparative analysis to the average home price in London at 650,000. Well, even if we took those two numbers, and I'm not suggesting that those are the two numbers, I haven't done evaluation in terms of a product market in Lucan. That's not part of the role of the land use planner. But I would suggest that that's a $150,000 departure in terms of a purchase price, which I would suggest to anyone is a fairly significant departure in terms of acquiring particularly a first-time mortgage. $150,000 could mean the difference between getting a mortgage and not getting a mortgage. And I'm using that number only as a comparative example. I can't apply that as a specific number to your community. The stormwater management concerns, I'll leave to the end. I'm going to ask Mr. Fleury to speak to that. Again, appropriate for young families and seniors. I do absolutely believe that the proposed subdivision is appropriate for both, as I've already mentioned in response to Councillor Regan's questions. There is a mix here, and that provides opportunity for everybody. There was comments about parking. Again, I would draw the attention to the municipality does have a parking bylaw. Parking enforcement is something that is available. Each of the townhomes is proposed to have a garage and a driveway. In terms of relocation of the road, really nothing that I can comment on there. It's not land owned by our client. Our client needs to access the property. And our client has frontage on Saintsbury line and has adequate separation from the other existing rights of way within the landscape. And again, the traffic impact study that was undertaken did not identify any concerns or issues with regard to those separation distances or the volume of traffic that would be utilizing this road. And safety of kids going to school, again, that deals with what the pedestrian structure is going to be on the exterior of the subdivision. That'd be up to discussions with the municipality and the county in terms of what pedestrian access will look like. And that'll be a requirement for any infrastructure improvements as conditions to the draft plan of subdivision. I think, Madam Mayor, I was able to cover all of those. If I could ask Mr. Fleury just perhaps to respond to the stormwater management concern.
Sure. That would be fine. Yep.
Great, thank you. In terms of the stormwater management, so the natural topography does drain from this particular phase towards Saintsbury line. And it doesn't have a lot of topography. It's fairly flat. I think it's about a 2% average slope. The idea would be, so the Timber Ridge subdivision to the north, the proposed Timber Ridge, and this proposed subdivision will be sharing the same swim facility, which will be located on the township's lands on the north side of the Whitfield Drain, immediately opposite the Old Clover subdivision swim facility. And all the drainage will be directed to that facility. And as Mr. McGuffin noted in the beginning of the presentation, the runoff is required to be attenuated to the pre-development levels. So through the development process, the stormwater will be reduced down to pre-development level. And in fact, on the Old Clover subdivision to the south, it was over attenuated to greater than the pre-development level, just due to the nature of the drain. It's a fairly shallow drain system, so we kind of hold the stormwater a little bit longer than usual and let it off after the peak passes. So in fact, you're over attenuating pre-development levels and slowing the water down further. I hope that answers the question.
Yep. No, I think that is good, Jason. Thank you. Okay. That one I think can be a question. Just going through my list here. Okay. Any questions now from or comment from council at this time? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, I got a few different comments, but I'll have people come and go through it as I think of more. But I guess the one thing of, the entrance, we own the entrance coming off of Dutchess Street that would go straight in, I believe, to service eventually the storm retention ponds that eventually will be our responsibility. Is there any way to be able to take that entrance through Dutchess onto our township property and then have it go left into that area?
I don't know who wants to tackle that, whether that's a Dan or Ron or Jeff.
Or could that be something considered? Don't really need an answer. Is that something? Was that? I guess my question is: was that something considered, or not, or couldn't be considered?
And I guess through the mayor to the deputy mayor. So my comments are coming through, and that is on my comments. So yeah, that will be something that will be brought up as we move forward.
Okay. No, because I think if that's possible, I hope it's considered seriously. So, okay. Also, I do find it interesting. I believe it's Jay that's been speaking there, and I think he did a good job on. It's a real struggle on council and talking to the public and developers when it comes to attainable and optional living in houses and affordability. It drives me nuts sometimes when it's spoken about, because it is attainable and optional housing. Affordability, if it's true affordable housing, that's typically subsidized by the government. And then that's subsidized obviously due to income. So it is, what the developers are doing in Lucan Biddulph is market rate and getting what they can get for it. It's not, there's nothing affordable about, and again, this isn't a shot at your project. There's no affordability within our township with government subsidy. It is all market rate. If lumber prices are $1,600 a board foot, if they're $400 a board foot, that's going to determine the price of the house is going to be market rate of materials and what people will spend. So it is, I'm glad I thought you did, I did want to make a comment that you did, I thought a good job on that. Unless you want to correct me what I said, but anyways, there's that. I'm a little bit confused on this project. You're sharing, it appears, services with the storm retention pond with Timber, was it Timberwood?
Timber Ridge.
Timber Ridge. And yet, as far as from our staffing standpoint, my understanding is there's no capacity at our sewer plant until we do our expansion, which will be in 3 to 4 years. So are you going to be taking sewer capacity from them, or is that where I need our staff or somebody to explain this to me, or is this, are you guys planning this for 5 years out, or is this something, the sewer capacity is a concern, but who can answer that?
I think Jeff can.
And through the mayor, so you kind of hit on two things there. The wastewater treatment plant capacity and the stormwater control and sharing it with Timber Ridge. So I'll start with the plant capacity. So far right now, we have a small amount that's still available. It has not been allocated out to Timber Ridge. That has not, there's no allocation there yet. Similar to this project, we would have to look very closely at exactly what's needed and what flows are going to be there. We're coming down to the 0 mark. So that would be part of the, as we move forward, that's going to get right down to the nitty gritty, Deputy Mayor. So that still has to be determined. As well, then for the stormwater, we still don't have a clear picture, even with the Timber Ridge and this development, exactly what stormwater will look like. I think there's a meeting coming up with the Conservation Authority. So there's still lots of work to be done on exactly what will look and where it'll go. And I'd just like to follow that up with a comment that was presented at the Timber Ridge public meeting that we always have to remember that is township property, and that any further expansion of swim ponds will have to be approved and supported by council. So that's still in the works.
Okay, thank you. The other thing, the Miller Drive condos, I feel when I drive by that, I got to be honest. I've said this to council. I'll say this to anybody. That high density is a concern of mine that's been approved and passed, and we can't go back. However, with this development, I do like that the artery, the road going in separates the condos by, someone can correct me, a road 21 meters. It's not the look is not, any comparison from what I see, and the separation of the road of these condos should not, I feel, be compared to Miller Drive. Where I'm struggling with, though, is I'm struggling with the 12 meters, and I'm trying to get my head around, if someone could answer this, on a peaked roof, 2-story house, what is the maximum height allowed in Lucan Biddulph? On a maximum height, 2-story peaked roof, if Dan could answer that.
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Deputy Mayor Manders, the current standard in the zoning bylaw would be a maximum of 10 meters.
To the peak?
10 meters is to the average of the peak. So it would be based on wherever that average falls above that.
Because and Dan, I want you to stay on, because I'd like you to explain to me, Lucan Biddulph has not entertained 3-story condos to this date. I do think, it'd be interesting, obviously, to read your recommendation. You need to hear from us as council on this. What precedent are we setting up, on maybe sites that it's, if I feel this site, I not facing Sainsbury, facing that way, I don't think it's as intrusive maybe as Miller Drive. It's my personal opinion. There's other sites that it maybe would be, and I'm worried about setting a precedent that Lucan Biddulph going to 12 meters in single family housing, dwellings, especially with our future residential designation, coming up, applying, the 130 acres and setting this precedent. Like, this is a big decision. This is a big decision on council right now, or on your report, whether we deny it or not, I believe, on the 12 meters. Is that, would you say that's a correct statement? That this is new to Lucan? We passed this. We've now introduced 12 meters in Lucan Biddulph for condos.
Through the chair, do you want the short answer or the long answer?
You can do right in the middle. Do half.
Well, I mean, technically speaking, planning decisions are not held. Like, every site has site-specific parameters that make it different from everything else. So to say that planning decisions are held to precedent, technically no. Planning decisions are not held to precedent. Each one is made in its own right and merit. But I would say that on the flip side of things, the way that it's worded in the township bylaw is it provides a very loose definition of what character is for the township in general. So if you're slowly changing the character of the township through your zoning approvals, that will reflect in these provisions popping up on other sites throughout your municipality. So no, technically it doesn't create precedent for other sites, but yes, it does create a new character and standard for Lucan in general that future developers can point to.
I think if the mayor's okay, I think Jay wants to maybe answer Mike if you're the chair, but I saw his hand up. I didn't know if you did.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And yes, I did see Jay's hand up. So I will, if there's something that you wanted to add in at this point, Mr. McGuffin?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the Deputy Mayor. Just wanted to identify there are zones in your zoning bylaw that do permit this. I think the R38 zone in the old Clover development has a 12-meter height. But as Dan's indicated, this isn't a precedence game. Every application is heard on its own merit. So we're not before council saying, well, you've got to approve us for 12 meters here because you did so in Old Clover. We're bringing forward an application based on its merits, the design location for this transitional housing opportunity. And but just wanted council to know that this isn't the first time that that's been permitted.
Thank you. That's all I got for right now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments from council at this time? Councillor Westman.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I understand the technical aspects of most of the matters that have been brought up. Just we tend to talk about the aesthetics of these developments, and we've had some issues with Main Street and maintaining the aesthetics of Main Street. My gut tells me that having these 3-story townhouses or condos right up at the road may not be a good fit. I mean, it doesn't look the same as everything around it. So I don't know if that's, I mean, I'm struggling with that. That's the only thing that really gives me great pause for concern, is having them right up at Sainsbury. I don't know if I feel good about that. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Westman. Any other comments from council? Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess, yeah, a lot of the concerns seem to be around the townhomes and the intensity of the development. And I was just wondering if the applicant has any conceptual renderings or something that we could see, just to get a sense of what a 3-story townhouse in this area would look like. And also, I was just wondering about the orientation of these townhomes on the block. Are they going to be orientated towards Street A or to Sainsbury Line?
Okay. Has Landia got that far in their what it's going to look like? Jay?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Hodgins. Thank you for the question. I can assure you the orientation is driven towards Street A. Typically, municipalities will require, and I'll have to turn to Mr. Fitzgerald and to yourself as a council, in terms of the urban design standards of your municipality. But typically in design, we would enhance the end units to make them also appear as though they're addressing from that residential nomenclature, to make them look as though they're fronting Sainsbury Line also. So by use of fenestration, articulation in the roof lines, things of that nature, we dress up those end units so that we're not turning our shoulder to the road.
Okay, anything else, Councillor Hodgins?
Thank you. Some of the other comments I heard from the members of the public about parkland. I think on having parkland east of Sainsbury Line would be beneficial. Recognizing that this area here may be a bit constrained to fit something in. But when I saw that bigger map showing the Timber Ridge development to the north, they have some larger blocks. And I'm just wondering, with that sort of spirit of coordination with Street B and tying it in, if there's opportunity for some sort of parkland between the two developments to be incorporated on the east side of Sainsbury.
I don't know, Dan, if you want to take that on. If I recall from the Timber Ridge presentation, was there going to be 2 green spaces? Because I think the concern was initially there was one that was supposed to be closer to this proposed development, but council wanted something in that phase 1. I don't know if you have any recollection on that.
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Hodgins. So I don't necessarily want to comment on the Timber Ridge development, only because it's still a moving target. They did provide an initial proposal to council through a public meeting. However, that given comments that were given at that particular point in time, it's probably subject to change, if not significant change, moving forward in the future. So, but like generally, I would say I think you're on point with stating that there certainly would be opportunity with these developments that are east of Sainsbury to coordinate, a collective area that would operate as a regional park service for development on the east side of Sainsbury Line. Whether that be located on these private lands within these 2 developments or on township owned existing township owned property, subject for future discussion that we can certainly have between staff and developers.
Jeff, did you want to add something to that?
And one of the comments that will be coming forward too, and we can, we're just getting into this. There is a park located on the east side of Sainsbury. It's located on Spencer Drive. And one of the big things we're keep pushing for is a trail system. So we can connect, these developments that keep growing, that we can connect them. So I think that was, again, one of the comments with the Timber Ridge one that should, be here too, that, if there's an ability to get a trail or get in a pedestrian system in place to get us to some of these green spaces, we would like to see that. So.
Okay. Anything else, Councillor Hodgins?
Just one last question, and it may be more geared towards staff. Just for, I guess, plans for Sainsbury Line and I guess its future urbanization or sidewalks being added, is that going to be driven by these developments on the east side, or is there already a timeline for Sainsbury to be improved?
Jeff, did you want to speak?
Yeah, through the mayor. So what we're looking at right now is a continuation of Sainsbury, urbanizing it. It's been in the works, and actually have been collecting development charges on it. We're looking at going up to basically somewhere around Market Street, so that we don't start urbanizing or doing roads that still will have development on them. So we're not going as far as this development or as far up as Timber Ridge is proposed yet. So what we would hope is, as these developments come online, that we can take advantage and hopefully shore up Sainsbury as we go. But right now for our urbanization, it's just from Market Street to the south.
Great. I know that the deputy mayor had his hand up, but before I circle back to him, I might just add a couple comments myself. Most of the comments and concerns that I had actually have been addressed or spoken to, has to do with the entrance. So I'm looking forward to the comments that will eventually come from our staff. And I appreciate the comparison, the deputy mayor's question to Dan about a single family home, what the height is to that and the peak. I am wrapping my head around what that sort of height will mean to it. And I would agree with the deputy mayor that to compare it to the development up the road, it's not really the same at this point. The pedestrian traffic is a great concern of mine, but we do have it in our asset management plan, as Jeff just spoke to, about the urbanization. But I think when we update that, we should certainly address, from Market Street up, as to what we think that timeline will look like, because as we know, our developments happen quite quickly, and as was remarked more than once, pedestrians crossing the road, connecting them to community will be paramount. Which I guess brings me to the concern of the crosswalk. And I don't know at what point that's addressed. I know it wasn't brought up in the traffic study and wasn't highlighted as a concern. But I do know that the county is often not open to crosswalks on their county roads. And I guess I would look to staff to maybe begin to have a conversation as council and the municipality consider more development along Sainsbury. I do think that at some point they're going to have to, that's going to have to be a piece of infrastructure that is put in there, not necessarily for this development, but certainly for one that is right beside it. We know that is going to be quite dense, and we need to make sure that concern, I think, is addressed with the county sooner rather than later. I guess I just wanted a little bit of clarification. I think that Jay did allude to it, but maybe Dan can just kind of, for my own understanding, why do we have to reclassify the agricultural, or why do we have to play with the agricultural zoning on that? I'm not clear on that one.
Yeah, so through the chair, Madam Mayor, it's really, and Jay did touch on it, it's a technical amendment to the zoning. So the existing zoning would require a minimum lot area of 40 hectares in size. So it is technically already an undersized agricultural parcel. So it would be considered legally non-conforming in that respect. As well, it would also recognize the reduced frontage requirements. So as per the bylaw right now, I believe the requirement is 150 meters of frontage on a road for an agricultural parcel. The frontage that they're requesting through their proposal is 30 meters. So it's technical in nature based on the fact that it would be a reduction to the overall size and frontage of the lands. But it is justifiable in the fact that it is the portion that is proposed for development is within the settlement boundary, and then the portion of the agricultural land, which is outside, again, is outside. So it's more of a technical justification to reduce frontage and area on the remnant lands.
Okay, thank you for that. Where am I? I guess I just want to be clear, maybe on the townhome units, and that they're not condos. So when it comes to garbage collection, to snow removal, that sort of thing, that will be a municipal responsibility. Am I understanding that? Or are they in fact going to be condominiums? Do we know that yet? Jay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What's proposed are street fronting townhomes. Typically, a street fronting townhome is not a condominium, simply because they'll be receiving all of their private drain connections will be within the public right of way, and their driveway access is onto the public road. I would anticipate their garbage collection would also be public. There is a bit of confusion in the nomenclature on what a condominium is. It's really just a method of ownership. So to say that, I mean, you could put this into a condominium, but I still think that it would be subject to municipal garbage collection.
Okay, thank you for that. There was a concern that was brought up, and maybe this is a question for Jeff, about the water connection at Kent. And just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any concern, and maybe that's going to be part of the comments that you're going to be putting together for when the recommendation does come to council. So I might be putting the cart before the horse on that one.
Madam Mayor, so the water main itself is not an issue. We do have good capacity there. I think the next comment is towards sanitary, which there's a major both developments are suggesting they're going to connect to that same manhole and go down Kent Street towards Chestnut. So as the flow monitoring that we approved last council, that will be one of the defining criteria from that monitoring, is we're going to find out exactly what that system can handle, what the sanitary line can take. There is different sizes through that stretch. So we'll have to find out exactly what's going on there, and that's why we're doing it. And then the storm, I know there's a municipal drain that feeds at the corner of Kent and heads back to the west into the drainage system. So the idea is not to take and put anything into that drain system. Both developments are to control their own stormwater and divert it not into that drain system. They're designing a storm system that goes back down towards the Whitfield to the south.
Okay, thank you for that. And I guess just the parking. I think we need to be cognizant of the parking concerns, and I won't repeat them because they've been mentioned a number of times, but I do think that is something that needs to be looked at. And then also then the stormwater and the connection to the swim pond, but Jeff, you've addressed that. So that has been looked after from my end. Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, I have two questions and a comment. Jeff, the Chestnut, I believe they said the sewer is going to flow to the Chestnut pumping station and then be pumped. Now, is that any concern of you? Like, I don't know enough about that extra volume. Is that an extra concern? Is that heavy maintenance at all for the public works or for our infrastructure, or is that just something that is a non-issue?
Through the mayor, at this point in the development that is proposed here, it's not a major aspect of it. So the Chestnut station itself is functioning fine, and it would not need any more manpower or staff to function.
much more maintenance or anything. They run no issues in general. Gotcha.
Yeah, I was just gonna say though, I just reiterate that we do have to do the flow testing on the sanitary lines. That,
right.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what is this, again, with these, going back to the condos, the 3-story or condos that's proposed, I'm just curious, what is the setback from the road with them not facing Sainsbury? How far, if Jay, I don't know, and it's probably on the drawing, I just wanted clarity from either center of road or edge of road or property line. I'm just curious where how far back it is from the road, the side of the condo to start.
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor Manders. So based on the zoning provisions that are applied for in the request, the exterior side yard setback, I believe, is 8 meters. So that end unit fronting onto Sainsbury considered an exterior side yard or a corner lot. So that exterior side yard to Sainsbury would be a minimum of 8 meters to the unit face. And then internally, they've requested a reduction to 6 meters.
So there's that's from property or from ditch area?
From the property line?
From property line.
Development, correct.
Nope, very good. And then just to, I guess, reiterate or comment to the mayor's, the crosswalk, or it actually concerned me or comment that the county is typically, whatever her wording was on the crosswalks on county roads. Because my comment is, it's every child on that side of the road has to cross it to get to school because there's no buses. I never really thought about it. This isn't an option. And there was a comment on the crosswalks being unsafe. If the comment was meant about the white lines on the road by the Bank of Montreal, I'd agree 100%. You're basically doing a death walk. I wouldn't be in favor of that at all. I think the safest crosswalk we have in Lucan is probably your true traffic light signal at Foodland. Next to that will be the flashing lights at the community center. But I hope that this isn't like most developments, that the safety comes at the end of the development. I don't know what our staff can do to ensure that. Typically, it's talked about for 6-7 years, and the safety comes at the end of development. I really hope we can do something that the safety comes as the development starts. I think this is a very large concern. Every child has to cross that street. We all know that. So, comment only.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. One last call out from Councillor Hodgins. I see your hand up.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if there's any need or if it's been reviewed for road widening dedication along Sainsbury line. Just looking ahead to that future urbanization, maybe there's a turn lanes added or sidewalks, bike paths, things like that. Doesn't seem to be shown on the draft plan of subdivision, but would there be any provision for that?
Madam Mayor.
Yep, Jeff.
Yep, Madam Mayor. I can say that it is a county road. So Chris, the engineer at the county, will providing his comments also. And Chris will, he's, and I guess Dan can also verify this. He does look into all that. Turning lanes will be, I don't want to ask anything because it's his requirement through that. But that'll be looked into, definitely. As well, in my comments that are coming forward, there will have to be some sort of access, pedestrian sidewalks in the design. We can't landlock these people from not having access to the rest of the town. So that definitely will be looked into also.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Hodgins, just to reiterate on what Jeff had noted, typically on a county road, especially one of this magnitude, it's usually an 18-meter from center line requirement for a road allowance. I have not received comments yet from the county engineer with respect to this development, so that's typically what we would see, but it is based on road classification. So I'll defer to Chris to provide those comments when they do come in.
Okay. Okay, any further comment from council at this time? And I know that I do see a member of the public's hand up, and we have received a couple of questions in our Q&A. Typically what happens is there's only one opportunity for you to speak, and in an effort to keep the meeting going. And I guess I will ask Ms. Morrison if the question that you've got to ask, is it something that has not been addressed at this point tonight? And that would be Diane.
It was more of a comment because the planner indicated that these developments are going on in Thorndale and Dorchester. And I have relatives that live in Thorndale, but believe me, they're having the same problems with parking, snow removal, garbage. So, you know, you're planning something. I hope you're prepared to if you're creating the problem, I hope you're prepared to deal with it. Because our bylaws in Lucan need to be enforced and updated.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I see that Mr. Van Berlo's hand is up, and I guess I would ask the same question. Blake, do you have another comment or that has not been addressed, that has not been brought up, I should say, tonight,
Yes,
to be part of
yes.
the public record?
I do actually, yes. No one has addressed my comment from earlier on regarding the inconsistencies between Timber Ridge and this proposed subdivision as it relates to the location of the medium density developments. Now, yet again, the Timber Ridge medium density block will be arranged such that there are only periphery roads for those dwellings to exit the subdivision. In fact, as it currently stands, the medium density dwellings in Timber Ridge will ultimately utilize the road B that is proposed in this development, which are described in this development, in order to get to Saintsbury Line. Why this is so pertinent is because it's been suggested that medium densities in this proposed development must be located along Saintsbury in order to have direct access to the arterial road of Saintsbury, but Timber Ridge is a direct counterexample. I think it's important that I bring up the possibility of switching the locations of the townhomes and the single detached dwellings because several neighbors and some council members have expressed the desire to do so. Thank you very much for hearing my additional comment.
Okay, appreciate those comments. I think that Mr. Fitzgerald mentioned earlier about being careful to speak to the Timber Ridge development as was presented, because as I believe the term he used, it's a moving target. Things are changing quickly with that proposed development. So I don't know, Dan, if there's anything that you wanted to add to that comment that was just made.
Through the chair of the mayor, no, I don't think at this time I want to add anything to the comment. I would note that certainly staff have taken that comment to note, and we did hear it as well at the private initiated public open house. I think I would just respond by stating there are policies in the official plan that specifically direct medium density development to be located next to the arterial roads with direct access. So it is a policy in your official plan that states that that's where it should go.
Thanks for that. And there are just a couple of questions in the Q&A that I will address. The one is, do we have a bylaw officer? Yes, we do. That does enforce parking. Yes, we do. To start building, I want to reiterate, there is not going to be a decision tonight. There's still a lot of things that have to happen to bring our planner, Dan, to a place where he's comfortable making a recommendation. So I would look, maybe, I wouldn't want to say when it would be brought back to council. I think that would be premature and not really timely at this point to say when it will be brought to council, because as Jeff said, he's still working on his comments, and there's still much that has to be submitted. And then the last question was, is it possible that the townhomes can be purchased as a whole by one owner and create a large group of rental properties? And of course, the question the answer would be yes, but that can happen on through any development, whether it's single family homes or townhomes. So at this stage, I think that all of our comments have been recorded. And as I said, there's still a lot that needs to happen and a lot of information to digest for anybody that's watching. Just a reminder that you can still submit comments to our planner, Dan Fitzgerald, and his contact information can be found on our website. So with that, I want to thank the members of the public for participating in the public meeting. I want to thank the applicant for their presentation and their the answers to the questions and comments that have been presented to them. And I would ask at this time for a mover and a seconder for the recommended motion in front of you that council receives report number PL-27-2021 for information. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Regan. And all opposed? And that's carried. And then the next motion we've got in front of us is that we adjourn our public meeting, which will be at 11 minutes after 8, and reconvene our regular meeting. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders, all opposed, and that's carried. And I might just say at this time that we'll entertain a 3 or 4 minute recess so that we can all get a glass of water and stretch our legs because we still have quite a bit of meat left in our agenda. Okay, so we'll rise for about 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, if we want to give ourselves maybe one more minute and then we can resume. Okay. Imagine, here comes Councillor Regan. Councillor Westman, I'm sure here he is. Okay, so we will resume our meeting. And we don't have any delegations. So we'll move right into the adoption of the minutes. And in front of us are the minutes from September the 7th. And if there's nothing to be amended, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve those meeting minutes of September 7th as circulated. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. Business arising from the minutes. There's a number of them that are all ongoing. The dog tags we'll be speaking to later in the evening. And I believe the ice chiller is coming. And of course, the secondary plan is a capital discussion. I don't know if there was anything from our last set of minutes that council wanted added to business arising. I don't believe there was. I'm just looking. Nope. And we'll move on to correspondence. So we have quite a list of items. And the first one that's been there's only been one that has been highlighted by staff to speak to. And at this point, I will turn it over to Ron to address the two items of correspondence received from the health unit.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The mandatory vaccine policy and COVID-19 prevention is an information item at this point. We're continuing to monitor what's happening around us. And at this point, like I said, it's an information item for council. We are seeing some movement, but that movement has been changing over the last probably the last 5 to 10 days. So this is going to be a story that we'll continue to monitor on a go-forward basis. So.
Were there any other items that council wanted to speak to that were listed in the items of correspondence? Okay, seeing none, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive the items of correspondence 9.1 through 10.1 and 10.2 to be received for information. Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins. All opposed? And that's carried. Moving on to committee reports. Anything from Blue Water?
No, we just had a short meeting. Commodities right now are probably almost at an all-time high temporarily. Francis feels, but they are high right now. Struggling with the drivers and employees like most people in Ontario. And no, there was just it was 15-minute meeting. There's nothing really new to report.
Okay. Question on Blue Water, Councillor Regan.
Thank you very much, Ben. Deputy Mayor, I'm not sure if you can answer this, but I know some time ago there was some discussion about education for residents about what can and cannot be recycled, and how that may or may not be changing. I'm just thinking as we're moving through this is becoming more and more important. And it's sort of the reason I'm asking, Deputy Mayor, is that I had conversations with the residents, and there was just some confusion just about what can be recycled and the condition of recycling things, like rinsing things out, and how sometimes things get thrown out and just contaminate other items. And I'm just wondering if there's anything from Blue Water that could come out. And if you don't have an answer right now, sir, that's fine. I just wanted to bring that to council's attention. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, no, actually, that was part of the topics. It's an issue. It's a real issue, actually, out to Graham Bend Way, where the transits come in and go on the high rentals and Airbnbs, where a lot of stuff, they just kind of pick and choose, where to throw it, whether it be blue box or garbage, and there's so much contamination. They do really struggle with that. There was actually an incident where somebody, believe it or not, in the garbage put almost 800 pounds of a slate roof in it, and the arm actually broke on the truck. They put a bunch of slate that was that heavy, and that's how dumb and ignorant people are. And that's just pure ignorance. But no education will stop that ignorance. But anyways, it was unfortunate. So they have people go around and do spot checks. They'll leave notes. We do struggle with it. I know it's an ongoing thing. One thing that I've been thinking of, I'm gonna bring it up to Francis. I've been thinking maybe if they put a QR code on top of the lid, because I think you can update that, because things do evolve, and so that way if you scan it, you go to a website, you can see what it will take. And I'm actually gonna bring that up to Francis, because things are different when people are, say, from Toronto and they come to Grand Bend, you can recycle there, and in London and in Blue Water, and even Blue Water will accept and take, does evolve and change. So I think, I've been thinking about it myself, because it is a real issue. Because it's amazing. I think the last load of recycling from the Grand Bend area just went right to landfill. The whole load. It was that contaminated. So no good news on it. Sorry, Daniel. They do. Okay. It's an ongoing problem, and they're going to continue to try to address it. Yeah.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Anything from CEDC? Nothing? No updates on there. Lake Huron, we have a meeting coming up October 7th, at which time we'll be discussing the budget. Nothing with fire boards, ABCA and Upper Thames. Councillor Westman.
Yes, hope you can hear me. I had to switch devices there. I'm out on the road, so anyhow, yeah, we had an ABCA meeting last week, and a lot of the same things that we've been struggling with for a while. Obviously, the changes to the Conservation Act are continuing to be a problem. There's lots of things that are affecting our budgets and may very well affect the levies in the years to come. So we're still working on that. They've done their turtle release. Unfortunately, we couldn't do the release with the public as we normally do, because it's always a great opportunity for people to come out and learn about how important these species are to our environment. But their staff was able to do the releases in the appropriate areas, and lots more turtles in the environment, which is good for everybody.
Great.
That's it. The Upper Thames will be meeting next week.
Great, thank you. Parks and Rec, Paul.
Thank you to you, Madam Mayor. Lost my mouse there. The meeting was already summarized at the previous council meeting. The minutes, though, are presented in this council package, so I guess I would put it to council if they have any questions that come from those minutes.
Okay, thank you. Anything? Okay, moving on to staff reports. Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report I have in the council package for you tonight is in regards to the National Truth and Reconciliation Day. In June of this year, the federal government declared that September 30th shall be a federally recognized holiday and shall be named, quote, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, or rather known as Orange Shirt Day. This day provides Canadians an opportunity to honor First Nations, Inuit, and Métis survivors and their families and communities, and to ensure that public commemoration of their history and the legacy of residential schools remains a vital component of the reconciliation process. The province did not recognize it as a provincial stat holiday, thereby creating some confusion amongst some municipalities are giving it as a recognized holiday, some are not. In an effort, I believe, to try and get to some middle ground, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario had a draft motion, and that motion I've included in the report in the package today. And it states, whereas the Truth and Reconciliation Commission released its final report on June 2nd, 2015, which included 94 calls to action to redress the legacy of residential schools and advance the process of Canadian reconciliation. And whereas the recent discoveries of remains and unmarked graves across Canada have led to increased calls for all levels of government to address the recommendations in the TRC's calls to action, and whereas all Canadians and all orders of government have a role to play in reconciliation, and whereas recommendation number 80 of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission called upon the federal government in collaboration with their Aboriginal peoples to establish as a statutory holiday a national day for truth and reconciliation to ensure that public commemoration of the history and legacy of residential schools remains a vital component of the reconciliation process. And whereas the federal government has announced September 30th, 2021 as the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, or National Orange Shirt Day, and a statutory holiday, therefore be it resolved that the council of the municipality, in our case would be Lucan Biddulph, does hereby commit to recognizing September 30th, 2021 as a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, or National Orange Shirt Day, by sharing the stories of residential school survivors, their families, and communities. So what the recommendation is that council, first of all, adopt that motion, and that second of all, we will reach out to our Aboriginal neighbors and try and obtain some information, some training, some education that will help not only staff but our residents as well. So we will be reaching out, and we will be encouraging all of our staff members, both inside and outside staff, to wear orange on that day.
Right, thank you for that, Ron. Any questions or comments on the report that Ron just delivered? Right, so just to be clear with this recommendation, we'll still remain open, but you'll be working on an education portion for our staff that can be shared also probably through social media and that sort of thing, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Okay, so the recommended motion in front of you is that Ron's report CAO-14-2021 be received for information, and further that council pass the AMO recommended motion. So mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan, Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. And then, of course, the recommended motion that Ron just read from AMO. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Manders, Councillor Hodgins, all opposed, and that's carried. Okay. Did you have anything else, Ron?
Not at this time, Madam Mayor, no.
Okay. Tina, I believe you've got the next report.
I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a brief report regarding a special contract position to move things forward with the digitization of records that we're doing within the office. As you guys are aware, recently we had moved towards the Leisure Feast program. And while we have been making some progress with it, some of our older records do require more consistent time spent to scan those in and just make sure that everything's moving along at a steady pace. We did, throughout the pandemic, utilize some internal staff. So I just want to say thank you to Abby from the Parks and Rec Department, because she did about a month's worth of records input, which helped move things along. And then now that we're kind of all back in the office, it's better timing to have a position hired where staff can be on hand to train and provide assistance for that position. So that's kind of where we're at with that. We are also considering this as eligible for future grants and looking into that, and there may be further information to come on that.
Okay, thank you, Tina. Any questions for Tina on that report? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Oh, just a comment, if staff would consider, and if it's possible that if you can attain somebody and pay them on a co-op basis, whether it be university or college student, I just think that really helps the individual from a standpoint of obviously experience and working for a township. And I think that'd be nice if it's possible, but if it's not, that's fine, but I'm not sure how you're going to attain this person. But if it could be a paid co-op student, I think that'd be awesome.
Thank you. That will definitely be considered. To be honest, I have kind of maybe avoided a summertime student position because I do think that it's a position that's going to require a longer term than 3 months. So if co-op positions or student positions are, would work with the timing, it is definitely something we could consider. But I do think it's at least a 6-month contract position, and could possibly be a little further depending on how far we get with it. I know some of our neighboring municipalities do have some contract positions that are currently coming to an end. So the timing wise here is kind of hopeful that maybe some of those positions may be interested in transitioning into another municipality.
Any other questions or comments for Tina? Okay, then you just have the recommended motion to receive report number CL-05-2021 for information. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders, all opposed. And that's carried. Okay, moving into finance. Catherine, dog licensing program review.
Thank you. So earlier this year, council requested staff to bring back a report in the fall in regards to the feasibility of the dog licensing program. So the report here outlines our current practice and timing along with some recent statistics. Currently, we charge an annual fee for a dog license. Invoices are created and sent out to the existing dog owners. And throughout the year, residents will contact the office if they get a new dog or no longer have a dog, and the database is updated with those changes. Also, every few years, the township will hire a collector to go door to door to be sure that all dogs in the township have a tag. In those years, we see a large increase in the number of tags, but in the following years, it drops off. We have not done this process since 2016. It was scheduled to happen in 2020, but the pandemic has put a pause to that. The current process takes up about 70 hours of staff time each year to produce bills, maintain the database, and mostly deal with residents. And this increases to about 110 hours in the year we send out a collector. Many municipalities in Ontario license dogs. The main purpose of the program is to be able to identify lost dogs and return them to their owners. This worked well in the past, but in recent years, there are other ways that pets are reunited with their owners. Most pet owners use their own dog tag to identify and provide a phone number. Also, it is more common practice to have a dog microchipped. Many people turn to social media if a pet is lost or found, and there are specific Facebook groups set up for this purpose. It is rare that the township is brought a lost dog to help with finding the owner. In Middlesex County, some municipalities offer lifetime tags at little to no cost, with maybe a small fee for a replacement tag. Some other municipalities in the county have a similar program as we do now. In the past few years, some municipalities in other counties have reviewed their programs and have eliminated the need for dogs to be licensed through their municipality. Residents often question the need for the dog tag license fee if they already have their dog identified in another way. Overall, charging this fee is traditionally unpopular. The township collects about $15,000 in fees each year, but the spend on animal control is minimal. There are options that council can consider for this program. So there's various like continue with the current program, so no changes. Modify the current program, that would be by reviewing other options such as lifetime tags or multi-year tags, etc. Or discontinue the program effective January 2022, because the current year tags expire at the end of the calendar year. Staff would recommend option 3, which be discontinue the program. The purpose of the program is not really being utilized. Staff time could be better spent in other areas. It should be noted that if the dog licensing program is eliminated, the township would still require that all dogs be able to be identified. There would also be no change to the kennel licensing aspect of animal control. If council accepts this recommendation, then staff will need to review and update the necessary bylaws and then bring it back to council, hopefully in a future meeting like next month. This will impact the 2022 budget, which will be compiled, reviewed, and discussed in the coming months. So at this point, staff's just looking to council for direction on this program and consider the recommendation made by staff. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that report, Catherine. Any questions or comments from council at this time? Councillor Regan.
So I just need clarification, Catherine, if I could. So if it's still a requirement, we're making it a requirement for pet owners to identify their dog. I'm just wondering, how do we enforce that? If there's a penalty, maybe I'm missing the point. But if we tell you, if you have a dog, you have to identify it. I'd be thinking that's a choice that the owner would make, but I'm just not sure how we would enforce that on residents.
Ron has an answer for that, but I could.
If I can maybe jump in, and I'll take a stab at it first, if I may, Catherine.
I think Catherine was going to. I think Catherine.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, it's your report, Catherine. Go ahead.
Quit fighting over me.
No, it's fine. I just said that because it's I think it's the best interest of a dog owner to identify their pet so they can be reunited with it and continue with the purpose of the program. And anyone finding a dog it's not running at large, so to speak. But I'm sure there's other rules in the animal control bylaw that would help with that as well. So
I would just add that there are requirements. There are fines if you don't have your dog identified with either a tag or a chip. And I think as things have evolved with social media and things like that, we're not seeing the same uptake, I guess, of the animal control person actually coming out to get the dog. Most people who find a lost dog will look at the tag. A lot of times there's already a phone number or a contact person on there. They'll do it without any involvement from the municipality. So I think it really has evolved over the last probably 10 years. And really, I think that's what the treasurer is trying to say here, is that there's really not the same need in 2021 for the dog tag licensing program that there was in say 40 years ago.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, everyone.
Any other questions or comments on this? You do have the recommended motion in front of you that council approve the discontinuation of the township's dog licensing program effective January 1st, 2022, and further that the necessary bylaws be updated, including adjustments that can continue to require owners to identify their pets. Mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. Okay, we're moving back into planning, and it's 12.4. That's the one that I've declared a conflict on. And just to amend my earlier comment, I think I had said that it was 11.4, but it's actually 12.4. So at this point, I'm going to step out of the chair seat and hand it over to Deputy Mayor Manders.
All righty. I'm going to, just so everyone knows how this will play out, where I'm going to be passing it over to Dan. I believe Lisa will be able to, I will ask if the applicant has anything to add, and then we'll go to council discussion. So again, Dan, applicant, I'll ask Lisa to bring the applicant on, and then to council. So Dan, take it away.
Yeah, through the chair, to all members of council. So the purpose of the application before council tonight is to provide an update on the status, as well as the updates made to the plans since the public meeting that was held on August 10th, 2021, and also to provide council with a recommendation respecting the request for draft plan approval of a condominium application, that being 39T LB CDM 2102. And the concurrent requested zoning bylaw amendment application, which is ZBA 9/2021, for the lands that have been identified and referred to as Granton Estates. Hopefully everyone can see that. The applicant is proposing a plan of condominium encompassing an undeveloped parcel of land that is located on the west side of the village of Granton. As noted, the applicant's concurrent application for a vacant land condominium draft plan approval includes the following: 26 vacant land condominium lots, or 1.13 hectares, one block for common property elements, which includes visitor parking, amenity areas, as well as a private road, which is approximately 0.47 hectares, and an existing 5-meter wide sanitary easement running along the east interior side yard of the property. The subject property as a whole is approximately 1.6 hectares in area and is located on the north side of Fallon Drive, west of the intersection of Fallon Drive and Granton Line, or County Road 59 in Granton. All the subject lands included within the proposed vacant land condominium are within the existing settlement area of Granton. The lands are surrounded with existing agricultural or vacant lands to the north and west, and existing residential lots of low density single family homes to the east as well as the south. The lands are designated settlement area, urban and community in Middlesex County's official plan, residential in the township official plan, and they are zoned a first density, residential first density R1 zone in the township comprehensive zoning bylaw. The lands currently contain an existing single detached dwelling and an associated accessory buildings. The applicant is proposing to include the existing dwelling as a unit within the vacant land condominium, along with 25 additional building lots or units. The applicant is proposing that the development be serviced by existing municipal water as well as sanitary services. Additionally, the storm servicing and stormwater management are proposed to utilize the Riddle McCarthy drain west of the site as the stormwater outlet. The applicant's report notes that the recent improvements to the flow rate as well as on-site detention will control post-development flows to the pre-development flow rates. As previously noted and depicted on this plan, the developer is seeking to establish 26 vacant land condominium units or lots, as well as common amenity blocks, which do include a private road, as well as a area identified as amenity area, and a visitor parking area. Since the public meeting, the applicant has amended the request for the zoning bylaw amendment in consultation with staff. In response to the comments that we have received, the applicant has amended the rear yard setback requirement reduction request to only be for the units that back onto the agricultural lands to the west. All development backing onto the existing lots along King Street will be required to meet the existing rear yard setback standard, which is 7 meters. Additionally, staff have added to the requested increase in lot coverage that 45% coverage shall be inclusive of any accessory buildings to be constructed on the lands. In this case, thereby, it is limiting lot coverage to 45%, which does maintain the existing coverage in the R1 zone. So it's consistent, which is currently with the current standard. Also, a request to the increase to the maximum principal driveway width has also been included. And up it to 50% lot frontage from 40 or 60 meters, whichever is lesser. This will ensure future owners can maintain a minimum of 2 parking stalls in parallel in the driveway, plus 2 stalls potentially in a garage. Additionally, staff have included a provision to require a minimum of 10 visitor parking stalls on the lands to ensure that they are maintained on the property in perpetuity. A holding provision is also included with the requested zoning, which requires the applicant to enter into a condominium agreement with the township and that the site be serviced prior to the issuance of any building permits. The Middlesex County official plan does identify Lucan as a settlement area and generally defers to the municipal official plan to delineate the boundaries of the settlement area. The lands, as noted, are within the settlement area of Granton, and they are designated residential within the township official plan. Planning staff have reviewed the proposal against the PPS, the county official plan, as well as the township official plan. Generally, staff are of the opinion that the proposed development is consistent with the intent of the PPS and in conformity with the county official plan as well as the local official plan. Additionally, staff are of the opinion that the proposed zoning provisions are appropriate for the proposed format of development of the site. Notice of the application was circulated to agencies as well as property owners in accordance with the Planning Act requirements. Planning staff note that they did receive 13 public comments regarding the development, primarily following the public meeting that was held on August 10th. Comments have been attached to the planning report and provided to council in advance of this meeting. Additionally, the planning report does contain a broad overview of some of the comments raised by the public with a response provided as well. Notably, staff have included the following requirements that have resulted from public comments received as part of the draft plan approved conditions. So number one, we have included conditions that detailed engineering design be completed showing sanitary, storm, as well as water capacity exists for the development. Number two, that access and safety concerns have been addressed through the requirement of the installation of a barrier-free sidewalk from the proposed visitor parking area to Fallon Drive, and then the completion of the existing public sidewalk from King Street to the site at Fallon Drive, along Fallon Drive. Number three, the loss of privacy, as noted from the properties on King Street, has been addressed to the requirement to install a 1.6 meter tall board-on-board fence at the boundary of the lands to the satisfaction of the township. Number four, ensuring the existing rear yard setback standards are maintained to the abutting properties along King Street, thereby ensuring an appropriate buffer for development standards on lands. And then number five, increase to the internal driveway widths to ensure the potential of 4 vehicle parking stalls per unit, plus the requirement of a minimum 10 visitor parking stalls to address parking concerns that were raised by all other agencies and internal departments that submitted comments have been addressed as preliminary draft plan conditions. So given the above, I am recommending that a resolution be passed in support of the draft plan of condominium and related conditions, and that the rezoning be approved and necessary bylaw with the holding provisions be passed by council. Thank you, and I'm certainly available to answer any questions that may arise.
Okay, I'm gonna, Rick, I believe, is on the call here. Did you want to add anything further, Rick? So I guess he's there, apparently, Ron.
I'm here.
Oh, sorry, there you are. Yeah, and you're fine with everything.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, thank you to Dan for yeoman work in the last week and a half or so as we brought this together to get it finalized. I commend his report. I've read the report. I've read the draft conditions and the draft bylaw. Those are, we have no objection or issue with any of those. I believe that the plans have been amended to address quite a number of the issues that were raised at the meeting back in August. And hopefully that's the case. A vacant field being developed is sometimes not seen as a happy event. In the fullness of time, in my experience, they do become completely accommodated within the municipality without issue. Matters such as on-street or parking, and I believe we've dealt with so that there will be no transference of any problems over to King or Fallon Drive. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And again, thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick. So council, if anybody's got any questions for Dan or Rick, I'll I'll start with Alex.
Yeah, great work. That's, that obviously took a lot of work to get all those concerns addressed. I just have one question about the privacy fence backing onto the King Street properties. Something came up in a conversation. I was just wondering about it. So what happens if one of those residents along King Street has a nice fence? How do we deal with that? I mean, obviously we don't want to have a break in the fence line, but I mean, that's certainly probably something that may come up and create a little bit of a problem. So will each of the landowners be approached and discussion on fencing and property lines and that sort of thing be taken in? That's my question.
Dan,
Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Westman. So the intent of the draft plan condition was specifically worded with the phrase to the satisfaction of the township. And the reason why we included that was specifically to have regard for situations like that where an individual may have a fence in that area and may want to maintain it as such. So it would be a discussion between the municipality developer and that individual as to how they wanted to proceed with that specific section of a fencing. But with that said, generally speaking, I know I did speak to Jeff about this earlier today, and the provision, I believe, in our own standards is that a continuous fence on a property needs to be located 0.6 meters away from any existing fence, which means in the situation that if we wanted to create a situation where we have a continuous fence line across the entire background, then it would just be having to move that fence in that 0.6 meters to respect the individual on the other side in their existing fence line.
Okay, thank you. Alex, anything further? No, good. Daniel, I believe you had your Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So for my question is just for Dan. So on the west side of that development, so the bylaw is not going to affect that with that. So that setback back there is not going to be changed on the west side. I'm understanding that correctly? Or if I got maybe not the west side, east side, sorry.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Reagan. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and I'm flipped there. So in terms of the bylaw, we did revise the wording in it to require a minimum 7 meter setback on the east side for the properties that are abutting King Street, which basically matches the existing development condition that is already approved on the lands.
All right. Is that now just, and again, just if I may, Mr. Chair, is that 7 meters off the easement, or does that include the easement? Just because I was out there with Jeff Little, and I was just wondering, because I know the easement there, the sewer is right along there, and where I'm looking at it, but is that 7 meters off of that, or 7 meters off the property lines?
It would always be 7 meters off the property line. So setbacks are always measured to property line.
All right. Okay, very good. Okay, and I guess the other question was, and if you mentioned it, then I apologize. So why are we changing them? What was the reason for asking for the change?
Through the chair to Councillor Reagan, do you mean the reduction from 6 meters to maintain
sorry,
at 7?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, there's actually multiple reasons why we had requested that change back to 7 meters. One of them being the existence of the 5 meter easement along that back area. Based on building code standard, a landing is required to be a minimum of 1.2 meters. And from the municipal standpoint, we did not want to have any encroachments into that existing municipal maintenance easement for that sanitary line. Given that if maintenance is required to that line, those structures would have to be removed. And we didn't want to impede access to the backs of individuals' properties. So it was at that suggestion that the 7 meter setback be maintained, which would allow a proper egress out of the back of those units onto their backyard areas. That was basically the first consideration that we had. The second one was in response to the comments that we had received from the public. There was quite a bit of concern about reduction to the zoning standards that are in place and ensuring that we provide a proper buffer and barrier to the existing homes along the King Street area. So given that, we had suggested just maintain the existing standard at 7 meters. That way those individuals could be ensured that that standard is not changing. It's been there, and it's been there since Granton was amalgamated into the Lucan Biddulph area. So it's always been zoned R1, and that standard will remain the same as it is now in terms of the rear of that.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, anyone else? Councillor Hodgins?
I just have a quick comment. I want to say thanks, Dan and staff, I guess, and the applicant for working together to address those concerns of the public, the comments received. It's good to see how it's laid out. It's clearly laid out, you know, what the concerns were, how they were addressed, and good to see that, you know, this process was followed, and glad to see a lot of those things resolved. So just want to say thanks.
Thank you. Or anything further, council? Yeah, I echo what Councillor Hodgins said, so I'm not going to repeat it. I thought you did a great job at addressing the concerns. I think it's a great development for the community of Granton. I do have a recommended motion in front of me. I will ask for somebody to support that. And that recommended motion reads, the council supports the draft plan of condominium and related conditions for 39 TLB-CDM 2102 as presented on September 21st, 2021. And further, that the rezoning application ZBA-9-2021 be approved. The necessary bylaw with the holding provisions be passed by council. If I get somebody to move that. Moved by Alex Westman, seconded by Andrew Reagan. All opposed? Passed. All right. Next, oh, maybe Dan, if you don't mind, just the next steps going forward.
Yeah, so through the chair, next steps in this case for the applicant is now to seek approval from county council in terms of the draft plan conditions of the condominium. Once the draft plan, assuming it does or gets approved, we would now then be working on the condominium agreement between the township and the landowner to secure up any detailed engineering designs and ensuring that what they say can physically happen. So just be the clearance of those draft plan conditions and the condominium agreement after that point in time.
Okay, thank you. I will be stepping down as chair now, passing the reins back to the Madam Mayor. She is there. And once again, I called everyone by their first name. But you know what? I think if I was the mayor and then the grand poobah like you, I would have to have them change their name to Councillor Reagan, Councillor Hodgins for myself. I know you don't have to do that, but I get caught calling them their names.
There you go.
Anyways, there you go.
I should have taken a longer time to turn my camera on and make you worry that maybe I left and that I didn't come, that I, wasn't going to come back.
Exactly. I'm ready to sign off.
Okay, moving on to Public Works. Jeff.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. So I have one formal report. It's an information report. And then I have 3 items just to update council on. So the report I bring forward is on electronic patrol and maintenance tracking. I think we touched on this on budget last year, but right now, Lucan Biddulph, we're staff, we do keep track of maintenance activities and patrolling through handwritten logs. And I think through discussion that we know this is changing and that the standards are becoming more electronic through GPS systems. We can accurately track our maintenance activities and our patrolling that goes on out there. This is important. Not only is it important to staff, we can keep, manage the system a little easier and keep the records in check a little easier. But what it does is it really, the legal profession is looking for this activity for lawsuits and that sort of thing. So this isn't something that I think we've brought up before. What I did was I wanted just to bring it back to the table and give council more or less an update. We are working on a couple of scenarios to bring this forward. And the budget, as through, I think we discussed in the budget, the cost to implement something like this program would be 10 to 18,000 depending on the program. And then there's always an annual fee for the storing of the records and the maintenance of the software. And that would be probably $4,000 to $6,000 per year. And like I said, there's a few things that we're working on. This might even be classified as something we can look at some funding for as we move forward. So other than that, if there's questions about it, it's more of an information for council, just to give them an update on what's happening out there.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Any questions on this report? Okay, then you've got the motion in front of you that we receive PW-21-2021 for information. Mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan. And seconder, Councillor Hodgins. All opposed? And that's carried. Anything else, Jeff?
Yeah, I have 3 items. The first item will be last council. We had the Kleiman report was accepted by council. And tonight there'll be 3, the bylaw will be presented and we'll read it. There'll be a 1 and a 2nd reading of it. And then the 3rd reading will take place after the quarter of revision. And that as long as everything moves along, then the 3rd reading will be down the road. So that'll come up shortly. The Roman line is closed. The bridge, they're rebuilding the bridge on the Roman line. So it'll be about 2 months. We're hoping to have it open before winter sets in late November. It seems to be rolling along quite well. We'll see how the rain affects them tonight. They're currently creating a bypass around the bridge for the water. So we'll see how that goes tonight. And the last, just an update for council, we did do an inspection for trip hazards and staff did grind down a number of items out in the system. We still have some patching to do before winter. And yeah, there'll be it looks good. We found a few spots out there and we got them corrected. So other than that, that's it.
Great, thank you very much, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff on those verbal reports? Okay, Parks and Recreation, Paul.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. The first item on the agenda is a follow-up to last week's council meeting. In the purpose of this presentation to council is to bring forward staff's recommendation to the request of the Lucan Irish Junior Club and the renovation of their locker room. It's important to understand that, you know, the desire to invest in the community by way of revitalization to the Lucan Irish dressing room to better facilitate their hockey operations and for teams to come in the future is a positive one, as we don't charge community groups a lease or a fee for these rooms. They've been granted to the groups by the community. So anytime they want to invest in these rooms, it's positive, as the rooms remain property of the Township of Lucan Biddulph. I think going forward, the appropriate way to address this is to put forward a letter of acknowledgement, which outlines the project description, conceptual drawings, and acknowledgement of full funding by the Lucan Irish Junior Club. This letter will also be accompanied by structural assessments and permits that should be submitted to the township prior to any commencement of work. Obviously, if the juniors are wishing to finance this themselves. There will be no impact to budget.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. Any questions on Paul's report? We did have quite the extensive presentation at the last council meeting, but any further discussion at this point on the report and recommendation in front of you? Okay, then you've got the recommended motion in front of you, and I would ask for a mover and a seconder for it. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all opposed, and that's carried.
Thank you. And then through you, Madam Mayor, the second item on the agenda, I apologize for the lateness of this, but I wanted to have accurate numbers to council to present, so it wasn't able to get on Friday. But what you have in front of you is a memo regarding applying to the Ontario Trillium Foundation for improvements to the Granton Centennial Park ball diamond. It's important to understand that this amenity has been, safety concerns have been risen by the community, as well as the playability on this diamond is not perfect due to the lighting and the shorter outfield with the low fence. In that, if we were to improve this facility, we could better facilitate service to the community by improving this amenity. It is important to know a correction to this as well. The assessment is not scheduled for replacement until 2026. That is regarding the lighting. It's not the baseball diamond entirely, but in 2026 is the next on the asset management plan is when it's identified as the next update to that amenity. The plan going forward, should council approve it, would be to pursue this grant for a combination of $240,000 for lighting and $30,000 for fencing. It's important to know that prices are fluctuating right now in all construction industries. So since we last discussed lighting at the Lucan Arena, it was $218,000, and now it's gone up to $240,000. So I think no matter what, should we be successful, we'll have to probably revisit this to discuss any shortfalls in funding for budget, as well as if we are unsuccessful at this, it may become a capital budget discussion.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Any questions on that report? Do you know when is the Trillium grant put in, and do you know when they make the announcement?
I do not know the announcement, but the due date is September 29th. So the countdown clock is going for it. I've already completed the majority of the grant. And I think right now it's just finalizing, getting council's approval, and then we'll go forward and submit it.
Okay, great. All right, if there aren't any questions, then you've got the recommended motion in front of you, and I would ask for a mover and a seconder on this one, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins, all opposed? That's carried. Anything else, Paul?
Yes, thank you to you, Madam Mayor. Just a few verbal items. Currently, some of you may have noticed the sign in front of the arena. We're having issues getting it back online since the last major storm. We're working with County IT to get this back online. It's important to the community to keep them up to date with messaging, and as things are always changing around here, it's been a very useful tool. So unfortunately, it isn't on right now, but we're working on that. One of the things that went on today, which, unfortunately we didn't have that sign for, but it still did very well. We had a vaccine clinic today at the community center. They had both Pfizer and Moderna, as I think they wanted to address some of the shortfalls in youth in our communities. So it was a very successful clinic. I don't have full numbers yet today, but it was a constant flow of people in and out of there today. So that was positive. The third item to discuss as well, just to keep in line with all the other parks and recreation departments across the county. As you all know, tomorrow is the date where proof of vaccine comes into play for facilities such as ours. In order to provide a safe environment for staff, volunteers, and occupants of the facility, we are going to have a representative on site that has de-escalation training to help ease with the process of entry. I'm hoping nothing goes wrong, because I think everyone in our community has been very good with this process so far, and we're asking for patience with everyone. And I think I think it's going to be a well-oiled process, and it's going to move forward very well. Hopefully there won't be much delays. I know there's some confusion back and forth with exceptions to the vaccination proof, but I think we have a very good way of addressing this without adding a lot of extra costs and adding a lot of extra time to people's day entering our facility. There'll be one access point at the rear of the facility, which will act as a point to all the amenities within the facility itself, the gymnasium, the arena. And, we will only be following the regulations of the province. I think that's important. It's what we're required to do. Any organizations that are going to go above and beyond, that's put on the organization to address those needs, as I think it's important that we follow the regulations of the province, which is what everyone else in the county is also doing for this. So I think with that, I have a good feeling about tomorrow. I'm hoping we don't have any issues. And, I think I've been in talks with all the user groups. There's been a lot of planning put into this, and I think, we're getting the information out to the community, what to expect. And I think it's going to go well.
Great, thank you for that. Paul, any questions or comments on Paul's updates? I guess my question is just on the requirement of the proof of vaccines. I know you've been in contact with all the user groups, but I assume we're going to post it on social media and keep updating. I think I did see a post earlier this week, but kind of a further clarification on some of those proofs that are required.
Yes, we have some preliminary posts that went out to people. Obviously, all these things have been changing very last minute, so we've wanted to have all the information before we've moved forward. A more lengthy post will be put up just to clarify those exemptions, clarify what people are to expect when they arrive, and hopefully, it's going to clear up a lot of questions. And on there as well, and I've been open to everyone that's come my way, that if there's any questions or clarifications, please reach out. I'd be happy to do my best. Please have patience. And remember, it is not me putting these rules in place. It's the province of Ontario, and we're required to do this. And we should be doing this to follow the regulations as under the occupier's liability. We are required to do these things. So any questions you have, I'm glad to answer them. And I'm not able to change them for you.
Thank you for that, Paul. And I will say that I too have faith in our community, that there's an understanding of this is the time that we're living in. And I am sure that the majority of those that walk through our facility doors will respect how we've got things set up. So, any other questions or comments for Paul? And that was it, Paul?
Yes, that's it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right, economic development, Lisa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have one report that's in front of you this evening regarding the industrial park tender results that came in just a couple weeks ago. And in your report, you have the tender results that were submitted by, we have 5 different individuals that submitted them. Like I said, the closing date was September 10th. So staff have reviewed kind of all of these different submissions and tenders, kind of looked at what each of them proposing. Given that pretty much they're all going to do the same, they're going to purchase and then build some rental units. Employment opportunities were basically all going to be the same as well, since they're going to be rented out to other small businesses. So staff kind of recommended then that we accept the tender bid from Wayne Perry and Thomas Schofield to build 4 commercial rental units for the purchase price of $175,000. The closing date for this would be November 30th, and that we're just requesting as well that the mayor and the CEO be authorized to execute the agreement of purchase and sale if this is approved.
Questions, comments from council on this report? Okay, then you've got the motion in front of you, as was outlined by Lisa, and a mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Hodgins, all opposed? And that's carried. Anything else, Lisa?
Just one other thing, just want to let council know that we released the the request for proposals to do the streetscape strategy and the accessibility audit that we had identified in our CIP to be done this year. So we released that proposals and they should be in mid-October. So that's everything. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for Lisa on economic development? All right, councillor comments. Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just have a question and a comment just for Paul, if I might. I received a concern from a resident with respect to the location of the playground equipment at our community center, and a question with respect to the safety of the kids that will be playing there. So I'm just wondering if you could just perhaps explain the reason for the choice for that location and what steps we've taken to protect our young Lucan Biddulphites.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Regan, I can definitely do that. The location was discussed a matter of times at the Parks and Rec Committee. One of the items that we thought was important was the location centralized to the baseball, soccer, and the pool, like the playground is now. We are running out of space back here for ideal locations for things like this. So one of the things that we've addressed is we've priced out safety netting because it is in a bit of a foul ball territory. But the safety netting we've priced out, it's 20 feet by 60 feet, and it should provide quite an adequate, if not a bit excessive, but better to go excessive than under safety protection for anyone playing on the playground.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just very quickly just want to apologize for my poor performance at the Warden's Golf Tournament last week. I apologize to all of my teammates. I'll try to do better next time. Thank you.
Any other councillor comments? On that note, that's a good segue for me just to thank my fellow councillors and staff that participated in the Warden's Golf Tournament last Thursday at the Fox. It really was a great day, and as I said, I had one last favor left, and you know, the golf gods were upon us, and it was like a beautiful day. And it certainly was well supported by participants, by sponsors, both local sponsors as well as sponsors throughout the county. And I don't have my total yet to announce as to how much will be handed off to the Legion, but we'll be looking for those numbers to be shared with you in the coming weeks. So thank you very much for that great day. We don't have any changes to budget, any notices of motion. Then we will move into our motions or accounts paid, and you've been able to review the accounts from August. So the motion in front of you is that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph receive the attached accounts as paid for information as follows, and that's for August 2021. That's for $705,937.40. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Deputy Mayor Manders, all opposed, and that's carried. Moving into our bylaws, the first one is for bylaw 60-2021 to provide for drainage works in the township of Lucan Biddulph. And this, of course, has to do with the Kleiman drain. And as was noted, this was omitted from the last council meeting. So this is just the first and second reading. So that if no one cares to speak to bylaw 60-2021 on its first and second reading, that it be considered to have been read a first time and passed and read a second time and passed. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman, all opposed, and that's carried. Okay, I'm going to ask Ron to help the Deputy Mayor with this next motion because it occurred to me, unfortunately not earlier, that the bylaw with regards to the planning applications at BA -9-2021, I can't administer. So the Deputy Mayor will have to do that because of my conflict.
So thank you, Madam Mayor, and my apologies. I should have caught that earlier. And so what I'm going to suggest is that if you step down from the chair, you need to hand the chair over to Deputy Mayor Manders. And Deputy Mayor Manders, if you could call first, second, and third reading on bylaw, let me just check here, 212, so 212-2021. If you can call that, we'll have that a separate motion because the mayor cannot vote on that as she's declared a conflict of interest.
What was that number again, Ron?
212-2021.
Okay, that bylaw. Okay.
All right, so I can be considered to have stepped.
Yes, and Deputy Mayor, if you want to call for a mover and seconder to move bylaw 212-2021, we can do that at this point and then give first, second, and third read.
Okay, if I could ask someone to move 2012-2021 bylaw, first reading, then first reading pass, second reading pass, and third reading pass, correct, Ron?
Correct, yes.
Moved by Alex, seconded by Jaden. Councillor Hodgins. All opposed? And passed.
So at this point, if you want to hand the gavel, the virtual gavel back to the mayor, that would be appropriate.
You can have it. There you go.
Okay, so then the motion now in front of us that if no one cares to speak to bylaws 61-2021 through 63-2021 inclusive, and bylaws 2010-2021 through 211-2021 inclusive on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, and read a third time and passed, and that they be numbered accordingly. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders, all opposed, and that's carried. And resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 9:26 p.m. A mover and a seconder, please.